Good evening. Welcome to the February 21st meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, the board held two work sessions. One was the annual Head Start Early Head Start governance training for the board, and the other was the JCPS Magnet Steering Committee report and update. No action was taken. As a FYI, for those in the audience who might be staying until the end, and for our reporters in the back, there will be an executive session at the end of this meeting. And currently, we also have one speaker on an agenda item that will be regarding recognitions and resolutions, which will be coming up here shortly. And we also have 8 speakers on non-agenda items. So just give you an idea of what you expect on today's agenda. At this time, please join us for our traditional moment of silence. Thank you. Now, I would like all of us to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to ask a special request from our Crosby Cheerleaders, who are state champs, and we'll be hearing from them shortly, if they would lead us in the pledge. So if one of them will take a point on that. Thank you.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to have Board Member Benjamin Gies read our vision statement.
All Jefferson County public school students graduate prepared, empowered, and inspired to reach their full potential and contribute as thoughtful, responsible citizens of our diverse, shared world.
Thank you. At this point in our agenda, we would go to our recognitions and resolutions. However, we do have one speaker that would like to address this particular agenda item. So if would Tamika Gray please come to the front and discuss or talk to us about what her issue or concern. Ms. Gray, our rules as explained earlier will be that you have 3 minutes to address the board. At 2.5 minutes, you'll hear a single bell, and at 3 minutes, you will hear 2 bells indicating that your time has elapsed. Ms. Gray.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tamika Gray, and I'm a senior at Central High School. Last week, I had the opportunity to speak at the Louisville Bar Association due to the celebration that was held for the 15-year partnership that Central has with the LBA and the Brandeis School of Law. My overall message at this event was to express the importance of taking advantage of opportunities, because you never know when you may get another one. And that's what the LBA and the Brandeis School of Law offers to students at Central High School. For the summer of 2016, I was an intern at the clerk's office at the United States District Court. Ms. Armstrong, who is the clerk of the court, came to Central as one of the many mentors to help us students create resumes so we could present them to the law firms that were offering jobs. And within the time that I shared with Ms. Armstrong and at the courthouse, I met with the chief probation officer, an assistant U.S. attorney, and the deputy U.S. marshal. I also attended court hearings and trials where I had the opportunity to meet District Judge Russell, who invited me into his chambers to discuss issues on one of the criminal proceedings that I observed. Being privileged with the opportunity to be an intern at the U.S. District Court was amazing. Can you imagine leaving work filled with hope, inspiration, goals, and even bigger dreams? That was my summer of 2016, and I enjoyed every moment I spent at the courthouse. And if it wasn't for the wonderful partnership Central has with the Louisville Bar Association and me taking an opportunity that was given, I don't know if I would have the passion or desire to still be in the field of law. But looking back, I can honestly say that I enjoyed my time as a high school student, and I witnessed and learned a lot about law because of Central's incredible partnership with the LBA and the Brandeis School of Law. I hope more students in the future take advantage of opportunities when they're given and make the most out of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Terry Robinson to introduce our recognitions and resolutions. Ms. Robinson.
Dr. Hargens, Board Chair Chris Brady, and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education. This evening, we have the pleasure of and receiving student demonstrations of learning from some of the district's most academically talented students and recognizing highly skilled JCPS student athletes. We begin with the recognition of Crosby Middle School cheerleaders who won the 2017 Kentucky Association of Pep Organizations Middle School State Championship. The Crosby cheerleaders were named the top team after competing against 15 other regional winners in the middle school super large division. The Crosby team finished their season undefeated with 6 first-place titles and 2 Grand Champ titles. Board member Stephanie Horn and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Glenn Beatty, please come forward and congratulate the cheerleaders. Joining in the recognition is their coach, Taylor McMillan, and Principal Michael Kelly. Cheerleaders, please come forward. They have 29 team members. I would like to ask the parents of these outstanding athletes to please stand and be recognized.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the honor of receiving 2 student demonstrations of learning in honor of Black History Month. First, we will receive a student demonstration of learning from Simple Elementary School students who will provide a presentation on their living wax museum of important historical figures and women in history. Students Tinsley Randall, Chance Drake, Uriel Sanchez, Lily Dykes, Jesselyn Stewart, Mia Garris, Michael Durham, Aniel Carney, Davis Randall, Yanisa Hayden, Victoria Duncan, Karan Pinkston, and Jasmine Prince. Please come forward to begin your presentation.
Ron Pinkston. I'm 5 years old in kindergarten. I'm Muhammad Ali, the greatest boxer of all time. Hi, my name is Tim Strait. I am the best golf player in the whole world that you ever seen. I am Tiger Woods, and thank you. My name is Tinsley Randall, and I am in kindergarten. I am 6 years old, and I am Simone Biles. She is a Olympics gold medalist. Thank you. name is Yanisa Hayden. I am in the 4th grade. I am representing Mildred Taylor. She is a famous book writer. One of her books is called Roll of Thunder, Hear Me Cry. Hi, my name is Aniel Carney, and I am in the 4th grade, and today I am representing Sharon G. Flake. She is an African-American writer of young adult literature. Hello, my name is Davis Randall. I am in 4th grade. Today I will be representing Daniel Hale Williams III. He was the second one. He successfully performed the second documented open heart surgery.
Hello, my name is Mia Garris, and I'm in the 4th grade. Today I will be representing Ella Baker, who was a civil rights and human rights activist who helped with desegregation.
Hello, I'm Lily Dice. I'm 7 years old, and I am in the 2nd grade at Simple Elementary School. This year, my school is having a living wax museum, and the person I am representing is Sacagawea. She led Lewis and Clark on their journey to explore the Louisiana Purchase. Hello, my name is Jesslyn Stewart. I'm in the 3rd grade in Miss Carter's class, and today I will be representing Eleanor Roosevelt. I'm important because I was one of the first ladies to bring peace to the United States of America.
Hello, my name is Uriel Sanchez. I'm 6 years old. I'm in the 1st grade. My character is Elijah McCoy. I am an engineer and inventor. I invented a device to help trains run better.
Hello, my name is Michael Durham. I am in the 4th grade. Today I'll be representing Percy L. Julian. He was a very famous chemist. He invented a lot of amazing things. He invented fire extinguishers and steroids. He also did a lot of all-natural work with soybeans.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Prince. I am a 5th grader at Simple Elementary, and today I'm representing Sacagawea. Sacagawea was important because she led the Lewis and Clark expedition.
Hello, my name is Victoria Duncan. I'm in the 5th grade at Simple Elementary School. Today I'll be representing Serena Williams. Serena Williams has won countless Grand Slam titles and 2 Olympic gold medals. Thank you.
Board Member Lyndon Duncan and Assistant Superintendent Brad Weston, please come forward to congratulate these students for their outstanding presentation. And joining in the recognition is their principal, Danielle Randall, and teacher Erica Neal.
Thank you all. And I'd like to ask the parents of these outstanding students to please stand to be recognized.
Next, we have the honor of receiving a student demonstration of learning from the Central High School Magna Career Academy Law and Government students who will share what they have learned from their study of the judicial powers under the United States Constitution and education in America. Students Maggie Barr, Milak Gross Lopez, Brandon McLean, Jasmine Scott, and Savannah Winston. Please come forward to begin your presentation.
Hello, my name's Maggie Barr.
Milagros Idiaques,
Savannah Winston.
Jasmine Scott,
and Brandon McLean.
In our first semester of our senior year, our main focus was on the Constitution and how it applies to the law. And now in our dual credit paralegalism class at U of L, we're learning about everything ranging from the government system to courtroom procedures and things like that. A significant lesson we had was on our judicial system. The Supreme Court is one of the most important systems we have in place in our government right now. Their decisions influence our day-to-day lives.
A landmark case that is often overlooked is Sweat versus Boehner. In February 1964, him and Sweat applied for admission to University of Texas School of Law. He was denied admission because Texas schools prohibited integration in school because of his race. He was a young African American. The court held that because of the separate but equal clause, he should be admitted to university. This led to the desegregation of the university. And because our government system uses stare decisis to decide on newer cases, this case paved the way for Brown versus Board of Education.
Muhammad Ali, the world-famous heavyweight boxing champion, member of the Islamic Nation, and activist, attended Central High School in 1958. After being drafted to the Vietnam War, Ali rejected the government's request for him to fight and kill his innocent brothers and sisters in a foreign land. The Supreme Court was convinced of his sincere and devout faith in Allah and granted him conscientious objector status in 1971.
These Supreme Court decisions are monumental, and none of us would all be here together if it hadn't been for them. An absurd fact that we learned is that approximately only 3% of the American people can name all 9 of the Supreme Court justices. We all know who our president is, Donald Trump. We know the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell. But can you name all 9 of the Supreme Court justices? Because we can.
Did you know that Supreme Court justices have a seating arrangement? 98% of the people don't know that, but we do. The senior justice of the Supreme Court of the United States is Anthony Kennedy, appointed by Ronald Reagan in 1988. His judicial philosophy is both conservative and liberal.
Justice Clarence Thomas was appointed by President George H.W. Bush in 1991. His judicial philosophy is conservative, and he is the second African-American male to be appointed to the United States Supreme Court.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, appointed by Bill Clinton in 1933. Her judicial philosophy is liberal.
Stephen Breyer, appointed by Bill Clinton in 1994 with a more liberal philosophy.
The Honorable Samuel Alito was appointed by George W. Bush in 2006. His judicial philosophy is conservative.
And in 2009, Barack Obama had the honor of appointing the first ever Latina Supreme Court Justice in Celia Sotomayor.
Justice Elena Haken was also appointed by President Barack Obama in 2016.
Neil Gorsuch has been nominated to the Supreme Court by President Donald Trump. He has Ivy League credentials, a conservative philosophy, and has presided over Colorado's 10th Circuit Court of Appeals for the past 10 years.
Superintendent, Chairman, the rest of the board. At Central High School, I pride myself on learning 2 things when I'm graduating, which in about 3 months. And that will be, I have a complex understanding of calculus, and I feel like I have a very good understanding of our legal system. And I feel like this is something that lacks in a lot of our schools. Obviously, the judicial system, how our Congress works, is very important to every one of us on an everyday basis. Without, for example, the Supreme Court, I would not be able to sit in front of you. I would not be able to use the same bathroom as some of you. And in some cases, some of us may not even be able to come here in this very building. And it's not right. And as a student, I feel like I should know who these individuals are who've made such a big impact on all of our lives. And again, we all appreciate your time, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.
Got it.
Board Member Diane Porter and Assistant Superintendent Joe Leffert, please come forward to extend congratulations to these outstanding students for their excellent presentation. Joining in the recognitions is their principal, Raymond Green. Dr. Hargens and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education, this concludes our recognitions for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. I know this is just an oversight, but will the parents of these nice young students and legal scholars, future legal scholars, stand, please?
The Central High School parents, thank you.
Thank you again. So again, congratulations to our state champs. And also thank you to our Simple Elementary School students for your wax museum portrayals of your historical figures. You all did a fantastic job. And to our young legal scholars, your knowledge of our judicial system, let's just say that it's probably greater than some that are actually in office. So thank you so much for all those excellent presentations. At this time, it is customary for us to give a break for just a couple of minutes. Oh, actually, before I do that, I need to actually vote to receive tonight's recognitions. Ms. Porter moves. Is there a second? Member Duncan seconds. All those in favor? All opposed? And there's no one. Motion passes unanimously, and we have now received those recognitions. So as I said, we will break just for a few moments, maybe a couple minutes, and let everyone, all of our students go home and do homework, and our legal scholars to study law some more, and our simple students to study history. So thank you. All right, I understand we have people still filing in, but we're going to go ahead and get back on schedule here. Again, thanks to all of the students for those fine presentations. So, I understand that as you file in, if you could keep the noise level down just a little bit so we can continue on with the meeting. At this time, actually before I go into the actual approval of a meeting agenda, just want to make a note of one thing is that this month and next month, normally our board meetings are like on the second and fourth Tuesdays, I believe. Due to scheduling this month, we've had it on the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday of the month, and we're going to repeat that for next month. I don't want that to throw anyone off. I think that there's been a little bit of confusion that's out there, and it's just we're trying to keep a 2-week schedule, and it's kind of worked out that way, the way the weeks turned out. All right. So now we're going to move on to the approval of the meeting agenda. Is there any discussion regarding this? Member Vice Chair Wilner?
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda in order to add an information item on the auditor's letter. I'm sorry, the KDE letter.
There's a motion to make that a change. Is there I assume that's a motion, correct?
It's a motion.
Is there a second? Member Horn, all those in favor? All opposed? And it passes unanimously. Okay. So we will add as an information item, what is this, a board response to, or board member response or discussion?
Just an information item on the KDE
audit.
management review letter.
Okay. All right. So that is the amended, Member Gies.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to take item 12, persons requesting to address the board on non-agenda items, and put that ahead of our superintendent's report.
Second.
Okay. Is there a second? All those in favor? All opposed? And motion passes. So we will make the... I did earlier. There is 8 speakers for non-agenda items. Okay, so we'll move that up to... One moment, let me make the adjustment so I keep track here. All right. So now, is there a motion to approve the amended meeting agenda? Motion made by Member Gies. Is there a second? Motion made by Vice Chair Wilner. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, so we now have an amended, we have approved the amended meeting agenda. Now moving on to approval of minutes of the previous meeting. Is there any discussion? Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting? Motion made by Member Porter. Is there a second? Motion made by Member Duncan. All those in favor? All opposed? And motion passes unanimously. All right. Now on to our speakers, since this has been amended. So at this time, we would like to invite our speakers that would be speaking to non-agenda items to come up to the front. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to address the board. At the end of 2.5 minutes, a bell will sound once, and then you will have 30 seconds to finish your statement. At the end of 3 minutes, the bell will sound twice, indicating that your time has elapsed. The way I normally would do this is I will call your name and call the person that is next in line so they can come up and maybe grab a chair just behind the speaker as a person that's up on deck, so we can kind of keep the process moving in a more efficient manner. And also one other policy issue about speakers is that make sure that when you're addressing the board that you are not speaking directly or specifically about one individual JCPS employee. Keep those comments general. That would be against our policy to do otherwise. So would Elizabeth Thrasher please come forward to talk about the Sandy Hook Promise, and after Ms. Thrasher, Brian Caudle, if you would come forward and be next on deck.
We're together.
Okay, so we can do that. And then Sophia Letson-Inton, I may be getting that wrong. I'm sorry if that is the case. And you'll be next on deck after these two. The floor is yours.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Dr. Hagen and members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Liz Thrasher, and with me tonight is Brian Cordell. We are both grandparents of young children in the JCPS school system, and we're both strong supporters of public schools. Brian is a Louisville native and graduated from Seneca High School and the University of Kentucky. He is presently a senior director at Kindred Health in Louisville. I'm originally from Britain and moved to Louisville with my husband 7 years ago to be near one of our 3 daughters and her family. Living in Columbia, Maryland for 33 years, I was a pediatric nurse in Baltimore at the Johns Hopkins Hospital and also a hospice volunteer. Several months ago, Brian and I watched a documentary film, Newtown, about the tragic shooting of 20 young children and 6 staff members at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut on December the 14th, 2012. Brian and I felt compelled to become involved with the Sandy Hook Promise, the organization which evolved through the grief of some of the parents whose children had died. They were determined to do something to bring gun safety into focus and worked for months with mental health professionals, educators, public health officials, and lawyers to try and identify what might lead a young person into such violent behavior as harming themselves or others. Together, they identified several factors. Social isolation and the feeling of being excluded from the mainstream was one. Students whose self-esteem had been severely impaired by chronic bullying was another, and the feeling of being invisible or a non-entity among their peers and student body. Any of these could also lead to poor performance in the classroom. We know that teens may be vulnerable to depression and other mental illnesses, and they often don't understand the feelings they are having, let alone share it with a family member or friend. And we know that bullying, self-harm, and cyberbullying is on the rise. There may often be very subtle hints from someone who is contemplating harmful behavior, and the Sandy Hook programs are especially useful in helping students, teachers, and parents identify such behaviors that may eventually lead to a terrible tragedy. Sandy Hook Promise prevents gun violence before it happens by teaching adults and youth how to recognize the signs and signals of individuals who may be at risk of hurting themselves or others and intervene to get them help. They educate, engage, and mobilize youth and adults in gun violence awareness and prevention, partner with schools and youth organizations to deliver at no cost our Know the Signs prevention programs, advocate for prevention-focused mental health and gun safety state and federal policy. SHP is a moderate above the politics organization that supports sensible non-policy and policy solutions that protect children and prevent gun violence. We are available to use all the resources that Sandy Hook has to offer to implement any of these programs in your schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Sophia Lutzen Etten, sorry, my mistake. You'll be speaking to us about sex education. Cindy Meyer will be next on deck, speaking to us about Maupin Elementary School Magnet Program. Ms. Etten, floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Sophia Lutzen. I'm currently a junior at Atherton High School, and I'm here to address the topic of sex ed. When I was a freshman, I received the sex ed program through my health class in the fall of that year. The people who came in to teach us were from a third-party organization, and the content was heavily flawed. The program was shame-based, religiously biased abstinence education. One example of an exercise we completed has stuck with me throughout high school. I was chosen to be the example, and the teacher gave me a piece of tape. She proceeded to instruct me to stick it on a variety of my classmates' arms, then try to attach it to another piece of tape. "It doesn't stick, does it?" she told us. She then elaborated by saying, "This tape represents a woman and her sexual partners. The other piece of tape is her husband. When she has had other sexual partners, she has a harder time sticking with her husband and is less valuable." Let me break down the flagrant issues in this analogy. For starters, what the presenter didn't know was that a month prior to her sex ed program, I was raped. I'll let you imagine how offensive and hurtful it is to compare a rape victim to a worthless piece of tape. She made me feel as if I was damaged goods because I had sex before despite it not being my choice. Another issue with this tape demonstration is that it's blatantly sexist. The presenter made it gender specific, shaming a woman's sexual history but not addressing the male's. This follows the ingrained double standard that continually plagues women. Why is it that women are held responsible for everyone's sexual behavior? Why aren't men accountable as well? Our current sex ed program barely brushes on the issues of sex that we really need to understand. By resorting to an abstinence-only program, we turn a blind eye to the fact that many teenagers are going to have sex and therefore should understand the risks and how to protect themselves against the risks and how to navigate consent and healthy boundaries. Abstinence education barely addresses crucial aspects of sex that people need to know. For example, consent. Maybe, just maybe, if the JCPS sex ed curriculum had information and coherent instruction about positive consent, the guy who raped me might have had a better understanding that no means no and only yes means yes. Consent education has become a common standard in college orientations, but for many of us, it's too late. Maybe if JCPS sex ed had more information about how to deal with sexual assault, more survivors would feel empowered to hold their assailants accountable, which could prove a deterrent to other attackers. In addition, JCPS students come from a variety of experiences and backgrounds, and our sex ed should cover LGBTQ inclusive health relationships, domestic violence, healthy relationships. I'm a JCPS student and I support adopting comprehensive sex education in all of our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Letzen-Eden. Cindy Meyer is now talking to us about Maupin Elementary Magnet School Program. Jessica Diaz will also next on deck to talk to us also about Maupin Elementary School. Ms. Meyer.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Cindy Meyer, and I'm a parent and teacher at Maupin. I've been informed that our innovation and model funds have been frozen until after the state audit, and we don't want to wait until after the release of the audit results to voice our concerns and the impacts on Maupin. We'd like to find a way to preserve the model at Maupin at all costs. In a Waldorf approach, children not only use their heads to do the work to learn, but their hearts to feel emotions connected with the material, their hands and bodies to do things with the learning. During our child's first year, he has been able to learn through play, movement, song, story, and imitation. The beautiful education he received in kindergarten made his transition to kindergarten much easier. School work in preschool was never fun for our child. Anytime a teacher would push learning in a formal setting, he would shut down. At Maupin, school became joyful and fun and something he did not want to miss. I also feel it's an important asset to the children living in the Parklands community that their education is not based on just testable skills, but skills that provide children with capacity. Truly, the audit at Maupin should never have taken place. It only happened because the current Maupin program was held accountable to the school's low test scores prior to the CATELPA model being placed there. Students at Maupin educating using the CATELPA model have not even reached a testable age yet, so the magnet is not responsible for those scores. Nevertheless, the audit happened, and we realized that neither the district nor the board can control what the state's recommendations will be on the audit results. However, we hope that the district crafts a turnaround effort plan at Maupin that will required by the state and the board to ensure that the CATELPA magnet program remains as part of the turnaround effort, even if that means to appeal the audit. The students, teachers, families, and taxpayers who have invested so heavily in the CATELPA model deserve the preservation of the magnet program long enough to see the results. I hope you will consider keeping the CATELPA model funded at Maupin so children can consistently grow and learn in the same ways. The children of the Parkland community deserve a truly beautiful education that teaches them so many skills that are not even testable. Waldorf education is the largest growing education model in the world, and JCPS is a part of it right now. Please keep the program for our children. Please keep it growing in the magnet Please keep growing the magnet schools in JCPS, which have garnered national attention and acclaim. JCPS needs more diverse educational opportunities, not less. We need to allow new and innovative magnet programs time to grow and become as sought after as those which have already established. In order for this to occur, Maupin needs funding and support. Most of all, the teachers, the children, and the school need a stable future.
Thank you. Jessica Dias is now, will speak to us about Maupin Elementary School. Aaron Corbelow is next on deck. Ms. Dias.
Hi, my name is Jessica Dias. I'm a parent of two children at Maupin Elementary. You all received emails from me over the weekend, and I appreciate those of you that responded. The responses I got were supportive and expressed that you are in the dark as us parents when it comes to what is and is not happening at Maupin. After following the Schools of Innovation competition, I decided to send my then emerging second grader and kindergartner to the newly incepted Catalpa School at Maupin. I could have left the second grader at Lincoln and likely obtained a seat for the kindergartner, as I know these spots at Lincoln are highly coveted. But I was greatly inspired by the Catalpa model and felt it would be even more beneficial for my children. I was mostly right. While the school faced inherent challenges through the transition, my children's confidence and creativity was blossoming. Then, without any warning, the media informed us over Thanksgiving break that first year, only 3 months in, that the school was going to be held accountable for prior year's test scores, which meant without a massive improvement, Maupin would enter priority status. In response, administration decided to revert back to traditional curriculum for grades 3 through 5. This, combined with the addition of several teachers, thus some students being moved to new classes, caused several magnet families to leave. Once the test scores for the school year came out, to no surprise, the children who are already struggling and just underwent a major transition with new staff and new models were incredibly low. Somehow, despite former talk of an alternate timeline and waived scores, this prompted an audit by KDE. Because of this, the SBDM, through the administration's push, decided to remove Waldorf language from the school's mission and vision statement. At that time, administration insisted that in practice, nothing would change. It was just an attempt to please the highly anticipated auditors. When returning to the school for the 16-17 school year, things also felt different. While the hallways were more peaceful and several classes were able to loop with their teachers, there are also numerous classrooms that no longer had the homey Waldorf feel that they did the prior year. It appeared that the encouragement and support for Waldorf methods had dropped off to some degree, despite increasing magnet enrollment and parent involvement. Even still, talks continued as if the magnet program was not under threat. I kept being told that they had preemptively done everything the auditors had asked for, or would ask for, such as new administration, new staff, removing the Waldorf language along with the alternate timeline. Then last week, SBDM apparently met to discuss the budget, and discussions were had that JCPS had put the add-on budget for Maupin on hold, which meant funding for many of the items that make Maupin unique. Yesterday, we got a last-minute Q&A and got more questions than answers. But in short, we're told that everything was pending the audit results, which would be released at an undetermined time. Meanwhile, potential incoming families had a sticker applied to their acceptance letter stating, "We want to inform you that Maupin Elementary is currently designated as a priority school by the Kentucky Department of Education. Based on our priority status, changes may occur that impact the magnet program for the 17-18 year."
Thank you, Ms. Dias. Aaron Corbelow is next to talk about district leadership. Next on deck will be Carla Robinson to discuss Maupin Elementary School. Ms. Corbelow.
All right. What is necessary is never unwise. I'd like you to keep those words in your minds as you listen to my message this evening. I was here before you almost 6 months ago, on August 25th. I spoke of a growing lack of confidence in our superintendent's leadership. The concerns have increased as Frankfurt has put forth numerous bills that seek to stifle our local control over our public school district, as well as do real damage to our public schools and to our students. Furthermore, Commissioner Pruitt has announced that there will be a state audit of JCPS, which has the potential to result in a state takeover of our district. We recognize that this audit will not show our current superintendent's policies and actions in a positive light. This audit will require strong leadership to demonstrate to the Commissioner that JCPS has the ability to learn from past mistakes and move forward with the great purpose that the people of Jefferson County have entrusted you with, to successfully educate every child that walks through the doors of any JCPS school. As we have heard many times, you cannot fix what you cannot face. So we now have to face the fact that Dr. Hargens is not in a strong position to lead our district successfully through this state audit. In the best interest of our students, and in the best interest of your professional career, Dr. Hargens, I respectfully request that you resign your position as the superintendent of Jefferson County Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corbelow. Ms. Robinson, it is now your turn to discuss Maupin Elementary School, and next will be Rob Matthew discussing accountability, and that will be our last speaker. Ms.
Hello.
Robinson.
Hello, my name is Carla Robinson, and I wanted to speak to you today ahead of the upcoming release of the audit results as it relates to Maupin Elementary. As a child who grew up in the Parkland community, I attended Maupin, and when it was right across the street. So as an adult, me and my husband found it appropriate to send our oldest daughter there. The Waldorf learning style has changed my little 7-year-old, who before it became a Waldorf school, cried every single day as we had to either drag her or urge her to go into the school. Now she loves her teacher, Adrian Moore, and all the staff at Maupin, even though, in her words, they give her many hours of challenging work to do. According to the test that she receives, my daughter may not be labeled the smartest kid in the school, but each day she learns something new. She may not right now know what 80 times 20 is, but she does understand what it means to be a good citizen and respectful to others, and why we should be that way towards each other. She also knows what it means to see yellow and red tape around a house or a street corner and police and fire trucks everywhere, and that is because we chose to raise our daughter in the west end of town, and we plan to never leave. This board allowed the program to launch at Maupin Elementary a little over a year ago, and at that time they told us that it would take about 4 years of this style of learning before we would see results. My concern is that knowing that Maupin was already having issues and could possibly be labeled as a priority school at the state level and at jeopardy of a possible audit, why would we decide to, at that point, select this school at that location? Now, the students that are there are starting to get it and embrace the new program, and this board has allowed the possibility of this program being snatched away from these children. On February the 7th, 2017, you voted on a resolution declaring JCPS a safe haven school district to protect families and students who are undocumented and living in this community, and I agree to that. All that I am asking from you today is to protect and fight with every breath in your body for the kids at Maupin, and to keep the Waldorf school style of learning at Maupin Elementary, which is one of our District 1 schools, once the audit is released, no matter what the results are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Our last speaker this evening will be Rob Matthew discussing accountability. Mr. Matthew.
And before I begin, I hope that Atherton discussion results in somebody saying what happened there. I've not heard a word from JCPS, and that kind of goes to accountability. And after that student speech tonight, I hope to God you all do something about that and say something as to what happened there. As we sit here tonight, we're looking down the barrel of numerous pieces of legislation: charter schools, neighborhood schools, bills to allow people to travel to any district that will have them. Then we have a KDE audit that could be potentially devastating. And as a JCPS parent and huge public school board supporter, I want to challenge them all. I want to defend the district, but it's hard. It's truly hard. For 2 years now, since Dr. Hargan's 4-year renewal was pushed through by a couple of overzealous board members and unfortunately proved by everyone but Ms. Duncan, it seems like JCPS has been heading in the wrong direction. So Dr. Hargans has assembled a new staff around her, pushed out many knowledgeable veterans of JCPS, and seems blasé at best as any negative story after negative story comes out, while JCPS's actions to both turn around the ship and efforts to publicize the many good things going on at all JCPS schools have fallen far short. We know charters are coming, and we know that many in the state, including our education secretary, governor, and some of our local representatives, are actively going to undermine public education, especially here in Louisville. What I didn't realize was that with so many visibles in JCPS, we'd make it easy for them to make their case. And that some of our alleged partners, including Greater Louisville Inc., who had nothing but praise for Dr. Hargans, would jump on the charter bandwagon so easily. And so, as someone who has tried to give you the benefit of the doubt, Dr. Hargans, it's hard for me to say this, but I believe it's time for you to step aside or the board to move to find new leadership. Years of bad publicity and questionable moves have managed to hurt students, teachers, and parents, as well as JCPS's standing in the eyes of the city and the state. As we enter a potentially dark time for public education here in Kentucky, we need a vocal and visible warrior for JCPS, preferably from inside our system, who is working to show our city, county, and state leaders that JCPS is far from a disaster, as our governor so tactlessly put it, but instead is a school system working hard to educate while facing serious social and economic challenges that are unique within the entire state. I appreciate the time and efforts that Dr. Hargans has put into JCPS, the time that she's taken to discuss issues with me, but it's clear that we're falling short in the eyes of those in the state who can most directly and adversely impact what we're trying to do here. So I ask that she consider stepping aside and letting us move forward with leadership more ready to take on the challenges ahead. Thank you.
All right, so that concludes our speakers for this evening. At this time, we're going to move on to our next agenda item, which will be the superintendent's report. Dr. Hargens, will you take it over from here?
Sure.
Thank you.
Chair Brady, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to present the superintendent's report. I will remind you, of course, of Vision 2020 and our vision that all JCPS students graduate prepared, empowered, and inspired. And what you'll hear throughout my report is that I see Vision 2020. But I first want to talk about House Bill 151. In 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014, JCPS had an explicit position on legislation such as the current House Bill 151. The most recent version of the position from 2014 stated, retain local control over student assignment. JCPS supports keeping the responsibility for student assignment to schools with local school boards and strongly opposes legislation that would reduce or eliminate local control of student assignment. If legislation is enacted that requires any local school board to change its current student assignments, the legislation should also provide that the additional expense to the school district will be paid with state general fund appropriations. Last Thursday, February 16th, I testified at the House Education Committee regarding House Bill 151 and the potential impact on JCPS. I appreciate Representative Kevin Bratcher, who has listened to us, and for his willingness to make changes based on feedback. We now have new information. I'd like Dr. Razor to share a simulation that we've done about the current status of House Bill 151.
Basically, what we have done over the last couple of days is, given the parameters set forth by the current writing of House Bill 151, we redid our student assignment plan to mirror what House Bill 151 says should be enacted. And what we found basically was that a little under half of our high school kids would go to different schools. A little over half of our middle school kids would go to different schools, and I believe almost 3/4 of our elementary school students would be sent to different schools. There are also some unintended consequences that I do not believe have been considered when looking at this bill. If you look at the model that we've put up on the screen for Crosby Middle School, those are the current students that attend Crosby in both the green and the red. The green students are the students that would continue to attend Crosby, and then students in the red would be sent to other schools. However, the students that you see to the northeast and directly east of the green, Crosby is their closest school. But now they would be sent to the next closest school. So the students to the north would be sent to Westport Elementary School, and the students directly to the east would be sent to Ramsey Elementary School because Ramsey Middle School, because Carithers Middle School is already full based upon the model. Can we see the next slide, please, Angie? This is Atherton High School. These are the current students that attend Atherton High School. You see that Atherton High School pulls students from all over Jefferson County Public Schools. The reason for this is because they have a vibrant magnet program at Atherton High School. However, given the current writing of the bill, students living in proximity to Atherton High School have right of first refusal for the school. In that scenario, Atherton High School fills up before any magnet programs could be offered, displacing well over 800 students, I believe 861, if that's correct from memory. So these are two pretty stark examples. As we looked at elementary schools, we didn't have a chance to run maps because we finished up late this afternoon, but some of our more popular elementary schools right now have enrollments of less than 100 projected because of the close proximity to other schools, while schools that have been close to half empty are now 2 and 3 and 4 times as have 2 and 3, 4 times the projected enrollment than they could handle.
Excuse me, Dr. Harkins, I appreciate what we've heard, but based on what we heard in the work session, there are some significant blows in District 1, and I think it's important that Dr. Razor talk about District 1 at this time because everyone was not at the work session, and I would appreciate it because I have people in this audience and on TV to make the, to talk about some of the numbers, because according to what I'm reading and what I'm hearing, District 1 will take the biggest hit if we go to this neighborhood plan, and to not say that so that people can hear it at this moment, I think would be disrespectful of the process. So I hate to interrupt, that's rude, I apologize, but could we have him talk about District 1 schools, please?
Yes,
Certainly.
ma'am. And I apologize. Those were the maps that I had large at the time to send. District 1, for example, Shawnee High School now would have 2,600 kids with Shawnee High School as its closest school. That would quickly overfill Shawnee High School's capacity, then sending, I believe, over 1,000 kids to other schools that are their next closest. In many cases, you have the situation that just occurred, as I explained, between Crosby, Carithers, and Ramsey, where other high schools get skipped over. So you're having kids who live and now are assigned to Shawnee not being able to go to that school because they don't live in close enough proximity, and then being sent to Atherton, Doss, Western, and I don't recall and Wagoner is the fourth school. The same thing happens in Western Middle School. Quickly fills to capacity, and then other middle schools, I don't remember the ones that they're assigned to, but it's also a leapfrog process in that case. When you, and Ms. Porter, to your point, when you look at many of the schools in your district and in other districts, we now have students being sent from the school that they have chosen to 30 different schools in some cases from just one school. Is there anything else you'd like me to elaborate on?
No, I just think it's important for everybody to hear. I mean, I wish we had the time, and we should take the time to do every district, because this will impact this entire community, but that's not the purpose of what we're doing right now. We're doing the superintendent's report. But to not talk about District 1, to me, thank you. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Dr. Razor. So again, during other testimony, achievement gap comparisons were given between a regular school, Dunn, versus a district-wide traditional school, Carter. And remember, traditional schools include an application and a selection by lottery. Context is important. So yes, the gaps are different at those schools. African American students at Carter do have a higher proficiency rate. We also know that from research that Title I students attending non-Title I schools perform at higher academic levels, and we can actually provide the data for that. On Tuesday, as was mentioned, we received the results of the management review from the Kentucky Department of Education. That review, you will recall, took place August 29th, was actually when the reviewers were here. The findings found 16 of the 22 findings were about seclusions and restraints. First, let me say that this is an issue that JCPS found and self-reported on March 3rd. That's almost a year ago. The first actions we took were to work alongside KDE to clean up our current files and to shut down our internal database. So we discovered it on March 3rd. March 8th, the database was shut down, and we only had one reporting system, which was Infinite Campus. In fact, you'll remember Jim Tenza, our internal auditor from Dean Dorton, actually reported to the board that the district had made significant strides regarding reporting, and he actually monitors the reporting. So I appreciate JCPS leadership, our educators and our staff who work hard every day. I know we will all work proactively with KDE to go through this management audit. We are all about learning here at JCPS. Learning is what we do every day. We will work proactively with KDE, we will trust the process, and we will continue to grow as a district. One of the things that I always do is show the data dashboard. And here's the dashboard, and it provides information on staff, student attendance, staff vacancies, and referrals and suspensions. And just to remind everybody, the reason the board asks to see this every 2 weeks is because time in class learning matters. So attendance matters, suspensions matter. So what you can see by the chart is, again, we're trending the same that we were with both staff and student attendance. Our behavior incidences are up from last year at this time, but we are reporting everything, and our suspensions are up. Then what the board is able to do is actually look at each one of these fields separately. So this is student attendance. This is staff attendance. And again, it's showing that it's trending about the same. Total behavior occurrences, you can see the red bar that we are up on those. And again, we're recording everything. The board will remember that I try to show what the top 3 events are in each of the levels. So you can see in elementary, it's failure to respond, fighting, and horseplay. In middle, failure to respond, fighting, and horseplay. In high school, unexcused tardiness, failure to respond, and non-attendance to class. And then you can see, because in Infinite Campus, schools also record the resolutions, and you can see the top 3 resolutions on each of the levels as well. Ms. Duncan, we report to schools certain incidents. So what we did is we wanted to make sure we presented that to you at your request. So you can see seclusion and restraints for every month, 15-16 compared with 16-17. So you can see the difference. So we are slightly less overall in 16-17 with restraints and seclusions, but you can again see it month by month. Then bullying and harassment was one of the categories that we carefully monitor, and you can see the difference between last year and this year, and also month by month. Bus referrals, you'll see that we have more bus referrals than last year, but it was last January that, this is up till January, that we started recording every bus referral. So you can see January to January, recording everything. We're slightly down from last year. And then you can see suspensions, which is on the other part of the report as well. We always look at certified vacancies because quality candidates and quality people in classrooms and in our positions really matter. So you can see that we track that regularly as well. Last week, we had the pleasure of holding our 9th Listen and Learn session. That was at Thomas Jefferson Middle. And I will say I spent a day and visited schools last week with Achievement Area Assistant Superintendents Dr. Katie Zeitz, Michelle Dillard, and Dr. Joe Lefford. And you'll remember that I told you that I also spent a day with Glenn Beatty. So I just want to give you some of the things that I saw. Here's an AP teacher at Westport Tap. Here's Mr. Miranda at Rangeland Elementary. Here's a PLC round at Newburgh Middle. Here's a performing arts teacher at Lincoln Elementary. And this is Seneca High School. They have a scholar advisory group that we sat with, and they actually think of ways to improve Seneca High School. On Saturday, I had the opportunity to attend the National Teens Overcoming Pressure Summit, and that's sponsored by the National Hookup of Black Women, and that was at Newburgh Middle School. I do want to also remind the board, which I try to keep you updated with, is for the pay period ending February 10th, 793 bus drivers and special needs transportation assistants qualified for the perfect attendance $200 bonus. The cost of the pay period incentive was $164,844, with a total cost thus far for this year at about $1.2 million. This is another view of the national teens. And I just want to remind you that the Student Support and Intervention Handbook feedback sessions begin actually this Saturday, February 25th. The sessions will be held from 10 to 11:30 a.m. at Wagner, Moore, PRP, and Central. The link to leave feedback is also available on the homepage of our website. So it's really important that people leave feedback about our handbook. The CE&S Foundation, the Humana Foundation, and the Bounce Coalition is sponsoring a series of screenings of the film Resilience, the Biology of Stress and the Science of Hope. The educator screening of the documentary will be this Thursday, February 23rd at 6 p.m. in Durrett Auditorium. Doors open at 5:30. It will be followed by a panel discussion around opportunities, barriers, and implications for the students being served in Jefferson County. So we hope that everyone will join us for that showing. On the consent agenda, I'll remind you that there is a job description as referenced in the last meeting for a school finance technician that will work to support bookkeepers. There also is an item that is the approval of district facilities plan, hearing report, and district facilities plan. Remember, that's the list. It's the same list that was preliminary provided to KDE in draft form upon your approval, and a hearing was held February 6th. And we're pleased that on this agenda is the approval of the agreement to merge the nutritionists into the collective bargaining agreement between the Board of Education and the AFSCME on behalf of Local 4011. So, Chair Brady, I'm recommending for approval the consent agenda later in this meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Harkins. Is there any discussion? Member Duncan?
I just have a question about the, I think this is a couple times we've heard this. Suspensions are up, but attendance is remaining about the same. Is there a way to explain that? Because our suspensions are up, and it should have some kind of impact on attendance, but it doesn't seem to be having an impact on attendance.
And actually, Dina?
Yes, we can provide that information. I think we sent that in a board response earlier, but we can resend it. But basically, it has to do with the total number of days versus the number of suspended days being a percentage-wise. When you have total number of days times the number of students, the percentage difference isn't that great. So we'll give a numerical example and provide that in a board update.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Vice Chair Boehner.
I just have a question. So it was helpful, I think, to see how far-reaching the unintended consequences of HB 151 would be. You mentioned that in 2014, the board, that's the most recent time the board had a position. Does that mean that that remains this board's position, or would this board need to make some kind of a have some kind of a motion to adopt a position currently? And maybe that's a question for Frank, actually.
I think that this bill may have been a bit of a surprise, so it wasn't in the legislative agenda that Jonathan prepared and the board voted on earlier. So perhaps if you want to go on record, you would want to amend that position statement.
Any further discussion regarding that?
Could I hear what our most recent position was? Oh, thank you.
Actually, I'll read it again. It's retain local control over student assignment. JCPS supports keeping the responsibility for student assignment to schools with local school boards and strongly opposes legislation that would reduce or eliminate local control of student assignment. If legislation is enacted that requires any local school board to change its current student assignments, the legislation should also provide that the additional expense to the school district will be paid with state general fund appropriations.
So let me just ask your opinion and your advice. I know Chris and I had a meeting with business leaders for education this past week. It was something that had been scheduled for a long time. It was not scheduled to talk about HB 151, but they were saying, we want to support you, but we need to know what the board's position is. So is there would there be an advantage to our adopting that position? And I'm looking at Dr. Hargens and Jonathan.
Well, we have a board-approved student assignment plan, so we certainly speak to that, and we speak to what House Bill 151 would do to alter that. So we can speak to what is approved by the board, but a position by the board.
I think generally speaking, as you were saying, people who are in relationships with us, both externally and also legislators, clarity regarding the position of the board is helpful to engage in conversation. That said, what we attempted to do with the work that we've done so far is give our best understanding of the impact of the legislation to JCPS, allowing people to make judgments on their own regarding whether that's a positive or negative.
Would you see any downside? And obviously we've not discussed it as a board. I don't know where we would land if we were to amend the agenda and vote on it. I honestly have no idea. But would there be any downside to adopting a position that JCPS board is being combative or?
Well, I mean, thus far, we've made every attempt to, work collaboratively with Representative Bratcher. We've met him on a number of occasions and had phone conversations, shared language, thoughts about how the bill might be amended to address some of the concerns we have. I don't know how a board position on the matter would be taken. It does provide clarity.
So I think, okay, Member Porter.
I appreciate the fact that things are going on in Frankfurt, but I also appreciate the fact that the board deserves an opportunity to read and discuss and to talk about the issue of putting things on the agenda. We have not done that before when things have been put forth because we don't have enough information about it. And I think if we're going to have a standard for one thing, we should have a standard for our work. And I understand things are going on in Frankfurt, but I'm a little concerned that we would stop right now, make up something, and vote on it when no one has had the opportunity to talk about it or see it based on a meeting that has occurred. And there will be many meetings that occur, but I think that does not speak to the work of this board because we have not consistently done that. So I guess I have to say that I have a problem with that.
Member Geese.
I have to say that I agree with Board Member Porter. I think this is something that deserves our full attention. It's been on the periphery, however, it has not been given our full attention until this evening with the report that Dr. Razor just completed this afternoon. I think we also need to allow those in Frankfurt the opportunity to be presented with this information to see if that has any bearing on their decision. And again, I would like to draw our board's attention to the issue of compromise. Let's see how we can work through this together in order to make a solution that will serve their ends but also serve our students' interest here in Jefferson County.
Member Kolb.
I agree with Member Geese and Member Porter that that's how ideally it could happen. I think in this case, there's certain exigencies given that the legislation could be passed and become law fairly quickly, certainly before our next board meeting. And I think that I see it as our responsibility as the elected representatives of Jefferson County voters to take a position and let Jefferson County voters' voices be heard. 2 points that I would like to consider the possibility of putting into any statement are one that, and I think the 2014 statement did this pretty directly, but I think it's worth making even more explicit, that this is really, HB 151 is really going to take away local control. And I think that a lot of our politicians in Frankfurt have espoused an ideology of local control being a good thing. And I think that we need to be really clear that this is taking control away from Jefferson County voters and putting it in the hands of state legislators in Frankfurt, the vast majority of whom do not live in Louisville or know a whole lot about Louisville. The other thing about it is if you look at the charter school bill and HB 151, and compare them, they really work at complete cross purposes. And we know, because we've all done and seen the research, that if HB 151 is enacted, it's not a question of if. We know it will increase achievement gaps among our kids. And I think it's, again, for those kids that would be most negatively affected and have achievement gaps increase, I think that we do need to take a position, even though I completely agree with Member Porter and Member Gies that under the best of circumstances, we would not do it in such an expedited manner.
Further discussion? All right, I'm of two minds on this issue as well. Yes, there is a procedural issue here where we want to be able to give more time to the board to be able to discuss these items. However, I believe there is a sense of urgency to this issue. That's something that to provide clarity to our to community partners as well as to legislators to let them know where this board stands. Now, that being said, it's always been my opinion that whatever the board's position has been in the past is still that position until actually directed otherwise. So to me, our opinion has been and still is what it was in the 2014 legislative agenda, because we never acted to really say that it wasn't a priority. So if we were to do this, and let's also be very clear that in our policy, it does give the board the ability to amend the agenda. So that doesn't necessarily mean that we are unable to do this as a body at any time. So the board policy gives us that ability to do that. So there is a procedural process for this. That being said, that would be something that would have to be, first of all, there would have to be a motion to amend the agenda once again. Then that motion would have to pass. Once that motion passed, then there would have to be a motion to, what I would assume, reaffirm our 2014 position. And we can read that verbiage again just to make sure we got it into the record and everyone's clear on what they're voting for. And then there would be a vote for that. I'm going to check with our legal attorney to make sure that my interpretation of that process is correct.
That's correct. There is one procedural wrinkle in that the agenda has already been amended, so to amend it again at this point in the meeting would require a 2/3 vote.
I understand that, but I also understand that we actually do have a board policy that does state that the board can amend the agenda at any time. And I know Robert's rules references that 2/3 rule, but if there's an existing board policy, my understanding is that that will supersede Robert's rules.
I think that the 2/3 vote is going to be required to amend the agenda at this point. That's really not a board policy, it's a board position statement. So
I believe it's actually in policy. I do remember, I can't tell you exactly where it is. I do remember reading it, because I thought that was that counteracted that view. If anybody wants to take a moment and quickly look. So regardless of that, there would still have to be a motion made and a second for that. So, and I think that, again, there could be we can look at it as 2/3 if there's someone that can. Is there anyone looking this up, by the way?
I'm trying to.
I think there's a. I'm sorry?
I'm trying to get there.
All right. Sorry for those of you at home that are waiting for us to reaffirm our policy, but my understanding is that we actually do have an existing policy that does state that the board can amend the agenda. And my class in Robert's Rules says that you revert to Robert's Rules unless there's an existing policy. And I didn't come prepared for that, but I do know it's in there. While we're waiting, is there further discussion about this issue?
Chair Brady,
Chris.
we have Member Duncan.
Member Duncan, please.
You know, it would have been nice to have had this prepared for this. I know we're reacting to information that we received today, but it would have been nice to have this ahead of time so that we would have been prepared to do this and included in the agenda as it is. I'm not sure this is the best way to do this, Mr. Brady, and I think I'm kind of hesitant to to push this way. I think we need to come back at this another way, and we are probably all united in our understanding of that HB 151 is about more than just local control for us. It's about, and you know, I've called it the non-neighborhood school bill. It's called a neighborhood school bill to get everybody to want to support it, but in fact, it's going to do more to send kids to non-neighborhood schools than anything that we have. So I feel like when we just say we support local control, that's been our position all along anyway. Year after year, that's our position. And I don't think that's going to, or to assert that right now is going to help us with the issue of gathering support to oppose HB 151. I think I just wish there were another way that we could do this.
Oh, I admit this is a very clunky process and clumsy way of doing this. And I just wanted to be clear on our process on our end to make sure that we're following everything we need to follow. So, and again, there's a sense of urgency to this, but I would love for us not to have, I would love for us to have this on the agenda, but this is also something that we really weren't aware that the vote would be kind of coming this soon. I'm sorry.
The agenda of a regular meeting may be amended at the meeting upon affirmative vote of at least 4 members.
So that's a simple majority. It's not a 2/3. So, okay. So again, that's the process that's outlined. So it would be a simple majority vote rather than 2/3. So the motion has to be
Disagree.
made.
I mean, our attorney, isn't it 2/3? I mean, that's what we agreed in another meeting. We've that was what we set out in another meeting. So how come we're all of a sudden changing our rules? We've acted under that.
Okay, it's Board Policy 01.45. The agenda of a regular meeting may be amended at the meeting upon affirmative vote of at least 4 members. And I think Chair Brady is correct that that policy being specific on that point would mean that the 2/3 rule in Robert's Rules of Orders would not apply.
Vice Chair Wellner.
So I appreciate the opportunity to have the discussion. I think what I hear Jonathan saying is that based on the past position, based on the student assignment plan, you've been able to work with this and make some progress. I hear a lot of people talking about how disruptive it would be, so I don't intend to make the motion, but I do appreciate the opportunity for the conversation and to think this through as a group.
All right. So is there any other further discussion, or is there anyone willing to make a motion? Okay. Seeing as there's no motion to be had and there's no further discussion, so at this point we're going to move on. Is that amendable? All right. Thank you to our attorney for looking that up, and to Jonathan for also helping with that process and looking that up. All right, so at least now we have that clarified for in the future. All right, so moving on to our next item will be action items, of which there are none. So therefore, we'll be moving on to our information items. There are 2 information items now. There was one, but we have amended our agenda to have a second one. I'm going to go with the first scheduled one and report on that, which will be information item A, which is the report on dual credit early college in partnership with Jefferson Community and Technical College. There are no speakers on this item. After we're done with this, then we'll discuss the amended item that was added in information items regarding the KDE management review letter. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent to introduce this particular item, again, regarding the report on dual credit early college in partnership with JCPC.
Thank you. This information is really about updating the board on current dual credit participation and highlight the impact of dual credit on student success and student climate, featuring Western Early College. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Herring, our Chief Academic Officer.
Thank you, Dr. Herring. Board Chair Brady, Board Vice Chair.
Boehner, and to our board members, thank you for this opportunity to provide the information this evening. We're excited to respond to the request and hope that we can provide detailed information. As an overview of our presentation, we also have some guiding questions that have been forwarded. We're going to try to, at the conclusion of the presentation, address some of those. Some of the data requests are a bit more granular, so if it is the board's acceptance, we'd like to also come back at the end of this week and provide some more data for you. However, in the interim, we are very happy to have with us members of our district staff, obviously our principal and student as a part of this evening's presentation. A few months ago upon hire, one of the things I had the pleasure to do within our district was to do a book study around coherence. Coherence allows for us to highlight several goals across the district, whether it's cultivating the culture, having a very focused approach to how we do our work, being strategic around deepening our learning, and also securing accountability. I would offer that to say that this evening's presentation is clearly a reflection of our opportunity to collaborate, because you will hear from several voices. You'll hear from, first and foremost, the principal lens, and we have Principal Newman from Western High School, who will be with us this evening. We also have the powerful voice of a student, and I want to make sure I say it correctly. We have Anna Reyes. Very good. Yes, who's an 11th grade student at Western Early College High School. And then, of course, we have members of our district staff, Dr. Pam Royster, curriculum specialist, Michelle Searcy, over our guidance and counseling, of course, Christy Rogers with CTE, and representing Jefferson County Community and Technical College is Dr. Diane Calhoun French, Vice President of Academic and Student Affairs. And so our goal to put into perspective this evening's presentation is to give you a perspective on where we are with our early college work at Western Early College High School. And then we're going to go into also the presentation around data around our work with dual credit, work we've done to date, state guidelines and expectations, and obviously opportunities where we have a chance to continue to improve. You'll hear, as I mentioned earlier, different voices, because in order to execute this work, it requires multiple roles and responsibilities across the district, not left to just one department. Having said that, our learning outcomes for you this evening will be that you will be able to speak to a common language around dual credit, as well as an understanding. We also want to be able to ensure that you have a sense of what law states around scholarship opportunities. Clearly, we have partnerships. We want to unpack some of that for you. And then, of course, as we've referenced earlier, take you inside to the early college experience from Western Early College High School. And that's, of course, where we'll start. And so it's my pleasure to pass the mic to Principal Newman and the very patient student, Anna Reyes.
Good evening, Dr. Hargens, Chair Brady, and members of the board. I am here today, along with my student, Anna, to share with you an exciting venture that Western has undergone. Just to give you a little bit of background, Western High School became an early college in 2010-2011 school year under a 5-year grant in partnership with CENS and the James Graham Brown Foundations. And we partnered with Jefferson Community and Technical College in order to provide our students the opportunity to earn dual credit while in high school, with the hopes that they could possibly earn their associate's degree before leaving. And over the 5-year grant and the additional 2 years, because we are now 7 years through our program, we have definitely seen a cultural change at Western. We see many students who are excited to be at school, that are working diligently to take dual credit as early as 9th grade, as well as potentially taking participating in an opportunity to be a college student on the college campus in their junior and senior year. And so next slide, please. And some of this, I think we jumped there we go. Some of this can be manifested in data. And some things I'd like to share with you is in 2011, the year that we adopted our early college model, Western only had 3.5% of our seniors college ready before graduating. In 2016, we have now grown that number to 52%. We've also seen a growth in the same time span of our average ACT score moving from 13.8 to 15.7. And each year, 100% of our students are apply to college, and they average earning over $1.5 million in scholarships. Next slide. But one of the things that we are most proud of is the culmination of our efforts over the past 7 years. So last year, in the very first opening year, our students had the opportunity to earn 496 credits in the way that the program was designed. 6 years later, which was at the end of last year, our students actually earned 1,606 credits in 1 year. More significantly is our senior class. 60% of our senior class last year graduated with college credit. 39 students passed one course. 40 students earned between 5 and 9 hours of college credit. 11 students earned between 11 and 19 hours of college credits. 17 students earned between 20 and 59 hours. And then 5 students earned their associate's degrees. And there were two... There were 2 students who earned their associate's degree in the 2015 school year, graduation year, and then we have 10 students currently on track to earn their associate's degree at the end of this year. And so, as much as I would love to sit here and talk about our program, I think it would be more important for one of our current juniors, Miss Anna Reyes, who is currently in our on-campus experience. She has 21 hours of college credit already accumulated and is currently taking 12 additional college credit hours this year. She is one of 40 students on campus and of juniors and seniors on campus, and she is here to talk to you a little bit about what early college is, what it means to her, and how it will help her achieve her personal success.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education. My name is Anna Reyes, and I am an early college student at Western High School. The early college program is basically an opportunity for students to receive credits while still in high school. You can start earning credits freshman year. And yes, you can. After, there's also an opportunity for you to go on campus, travel to JCTC, and even earn 9 or up to 15 credits hour per semester. With that being said, it gives the advantage to a student to receive their associate's degree by the time they graduate high school. And I am very, very thankful to be a part of this program, and I know that it's very powerful to the students at Western and also for me, because I would have never thought that I would be able to say that I'm almost finished with my first year in college and I'm a junior in high school, and I think that's pretty amazing. Another thing that's great is that it's preparing me because it's taught me how to accept challenges and also how to be responsible, and I think it's a great way for prep for the real world. And also, the program has given me an opportunity to see myself succeed because financial-wise, obviously, the credits are free, and it has helped me and my family tremendously. And it's just amazing, and I know I'm going to make them proud one day when I get to walk across the stage, not only to receive my high school diploma, but also my associate's degree in science. And also, I plan to still continue my education and transfer all my credits to U of L and to receive my bachelor's degree in human health services. Thank you for having me talk to you today. And with really big, gigantic confidence, I can say that the dual credit program and Western's early college is an experience that every student should be able to participate in. Thank you.
Thanks. What a great example of the power of dual credit, which is why we're here today to give you an update. I have the distinct pleasure of transitioning to talk about everyone's favorite topic, and that's policy and data. So you do have a handout that's a part of your board materials that gives you a little bit more details about 3 important policy changes that occurred this year. Brief overview, JCPS added dual credit to the list of college equivalent courses that get extra value in a weighted GPA, which is great for kids because now they'll try and take a dual credit along with an advanced placement IB type of course without fear of killing their GPA. There was a dual credit policy from the Kentucky Department of Education, which governs K-12, and the Council on Post-Secondary Education, which has some oversight over the state public post-secondary institutions, which went into effect this fall and basically gave us some rules of engagement that were consistent across the state, across local education agencies, and across post-secondary partners to kind of help ease some challenges that we'd had with different partners in different areas of the state. So we have a better way to get access across the state to dual credit. The biggest one that you may have heard of is actually by executive order from Governor Bevin that occurred in the end of June, about 6 weeks before school started, that graciously gave our students a scholarship to participate in dual credit. This is by executive order, which means it either has to be annually renewed or become legislation. There is a bill currently in the legislature to make it long term, but this basically was an allocation from the Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority that was proportionate to the senior class of each high school. So each school got an allocation based on the number of students that they had in their senior class. It allows for a student, priority given to seniors, to take 2 courses per academic year for a total of 9 academic credit hours for college, which means they could potentially take some as a junior and some as a senior. And this, again, started this school year, which has had a pretty good impact on opportunity for students. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about dual credit participation in this school year. Unfortunately, we cannot provide you trend data that is accurate because when the scholarship came about this summer, the rules for how we code things in Infinite Campus changed completely. So we would be comparing 2 different things between this year and last year, opportunity versus actual participation. But this is a picture of what we have. We have 1,388 students taking 2,468 dual credit classes. You can see that we have a disproportionate amount of females because if you look at the high school population, we're pretty close to 50-50. But I think we're going to work on that with some different course offerings. You'll hear about some different opportunities that are coming up next year. And in the second graph, you'll see the participation with different post-secondary partners. We currently work with 8. You see a small number with Western. They provide, Western Kentucky University, they provide an online course that's given some access to kids where there may not be a whole classroom of students that can take advantage of dual credit, but it still allows them some access. So I'm going to pass it to Michelle to talk about counselors.
So we have lots of opportunities for kids in JCPS, but if our students are not aware of those opportunities, it doesn't have quite the impact that we would like for it to. And that's where our school counselors come in at. Our school counselors work to advise students on lots of different advanced learning opportunities that they have. They talk to students about AP classes, IB classes, Craft and Gatton Academy, as well as dual credit courses. They expose students to those opportunities by doing whole group counseling. They do individual counseling. They meet with parents to advise them. And then they also work collaboratively with teachers. And we know in best practice that the more times we give students information and expose them to that information and encourage them to participate, the more likely they are to actually take advantage of those opportunities. And so a lot of our counselors, they partner with teachers in their school. So for example, at J-Town High School, our school counselors go in and they do whole group guidance counseling on credits and courses that are available to students. And then they do that with their current students, and then they go into the middle schools and they do that twice a year with their incoming 9th graders. To follow that up, their teachers have something called Academy Days, where they discuss a lot of different options and opportunities, but they also reinforce what the counselors have told them about these advanced learning opportunities. At PRP, they do something very similar. They do whole group guidance counseling with students on the opportunities, but then they meet with students individually to make sure that they are encouraging them to take those opportunities that are given to them. But then they also talk to students and dispel any preconceived notions or worries they may have about taking advanced courses. In conjunction, all of our high schools, their master schedulers have to work collaboratively with our partnering institutions to make sure that the schedule supports dual credits. Some of our dual credit courses require double block scheduling to ensure that students have adequate seat time and instructional time in order to earn those credits. So we have a district resource teacher that works with our school counselors and our master schedulers to make sure that the scheduling structure does not impede any of our students from participating in these courses. And I will turn it over to Christy.
If you'll take a look up at the slide, this is just an example of how the Office of College and Career Readiness, our goal, will impact dual credit. This is a sample in the boxes going across of a medical student. And you've heard our talent development academies, but schools that aren't talent development academies that also have nursing program, a student may earn a 3-hour dual credit in medical terminology. We take advantage of the scholarship free. Another 3 hours in the senior year, another 2 hours. Some of our hours are not always clean, 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours, and that's, you know, so we have some courses that are 2 hours, but you could see a nursing student could, with $182 earn, that in this scenario is 11 and a half hours minimum in the nursing career and technical pathway, along with an M&A certification. Our goal is that every career pathway, at minimum, a student can get 12 hours and out of pocket $156. They would pay for one course on their own and to take advantage of the 9. That's at a minimum, not to speak to their English dual credits or AP courses that complement that. Obviously, a goal would be every student earn 12 to 24 hours in CTE world. We've got a great opportunity to do more with a focused approach, and I think over the next couple years you will just see this explode. We want every child to leave industry certified with dual credit in their pocket. We've got to do better in career and technical education. Our welders, our electricians, same thing across the board. We'll work with every school and every partner individually. We literally meet weekly with Telly Sellers, Donna Miller on dual credit opportunities. So we're getting a handle on where we are. We've got a lot of good in place, but we'll continue to grow. Just wanted you to see a model of how it works in CTE education. It's not just English and math, but we want that in every career pathway.
We have been partners for a long time with JCPS in all kinds of dual credit and related initiatives. The key these days is the term pathways, but we've been at Valley High School for industrial chemical technology. We've had Cisco academies. We've had partnerships in aviation, cosmetology, e-learning, etc. I'll give you some numbers here in the next slide. You can see that we've had a little bit of a downtrend this fall. As Pam mentioned, part of the difficulties we had this fall were was the lateness of the executive order, and so we are still very much trying to work all these partnerships out. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that we have students both on campus who are JCPS students, as well as students at off-campus locations. If you look at the next slide, you can see how well the students are doing. These are students who are online students and at JCPS locations, but a pass rate of A, B, or C of 84%. So students are doing well. If we look at the next slide, when we have the Advanced Manufacturing and Information Technology building, which will be going up on First Street near our campus, what we hope to do is have a co-location of JCPS staff along with Jefferson Community and Technical College staff so that we can have a true partnership working day by day, side by side together for these students. Finally, what we're seeing is really the evolution of dual credit, where we have a greater intentionality of what we're doing. Rather than just what courses do students want, it's a matter of saying what courses do students need, how do we start them off very intentionally on a path, give them more structure, but ironically greater flexibility, so that they can have a choice that will put them where they need to be to get to their goals quickly. It's tailored to student readiness, and as it is really focused on pathways. And as important, we are hoping to work with employers and with our transfer partners to ensure that we're looking really at the continuum of the student's education, leading all the way to employment. So the result, we hope, will be more motivated students, more career and transfer ready students, and as I think you can see tonight, students experiencing success earlier, because that is what will build the momentum to really move students through.
So as the microphone comes down, it's a question of, so what's next as we're moving forward? So just to recap, I just want to give a shout out to Anna, although she's sitting right here beside us. She said at graduation, your parents will be proud. I'm going to bet, if I was a betting woman, that they're proud right now, as much as we are as well. And I think that Anna is an amazing example of exactly what we want to see with our students and our schools and our efforts to ensure that our children graduate not just college ready, but career ready. And that is something to be applauded again and to be celebrated. I definitely want to highlight that. As we continue to move forward, we have several opportunities to also be intentional about partnerships. We are very thankful for our partnership with JCTC and the work that is ahead. Our team, again, reflects the collaborative effort of many individuals. We also know that as we continue to promote these opportunities for our students, there is an opportunity for us to be intentional around how we inform, recruit, educate, and empower our parents as much as our students. I'm glad to hear and the highlighting from Ms. Cersei as it relates to the work of our counselors, and we know that they're not alone in those endeavors. Additionally, as Principal Newman shared, leadership matters, and that too is a critical role in how we can support all of our schools and their needs. As it relates to increasing our numbers, we've spoken to the balance of male and female, and we also want to provide more data to you around student completers and what that looks like across different demographic areas, and that was a request that we are working on. It takes a little bit more time to get a bit more granular for you, but that is absolutely coming, and we look forward to continuing to celebrate this opportunity. I'll just say, as one who's had the opportunity to work with dual credit or CTE in past roles and experiences, JCPS is doing a great job in this endeavor. That is not to say we don't have more work to do, but it is to pause and highlight to say that these are great examples of exactly what we want to see for our students. One of the follow-up questions was, if numbers are low, what could be some of the considerations? We know this is not the only offering for our students. AP, advanced placement, and other college-ready opportunities are also available to our students. And so kudos to the students and counselors and parents who balance that out for the long-term goal of their child's success. At this time, we'll offer up our opportunity to answer any questions we can field for you, and we'll share that amongst the team, but if we can answer it, we will do so accordingly.
Thank you, Dr. Herring. Colleagues, who would like to ask the question first? Anyone? Member Horn.
This is kind of a passionate area for me personally. I'll just tell you a little bit about my story. I started doing the same thing, but of course it was like years and years ago, eons ago, when I started as a freshman, thinking about going to the junior college in my hometown in Illinois. And so I started doing that, and I graduated at 16. Back then you had to kind of do high school and college. So I just kind of did my high school, and then I just kept going with the junior college. But it was really it created my own way. And it ended up, saved a lot of money. I did make my parents happy, because I made myself happy too, because it gave me the encouragement as such a young, woman that I could do with that. So I'm so excited about this for JCPS and for JCTC. I have a son there, loves it. He will get his associate's degree also this spring. So it's been a great thing for my family to be at JCTC, and I hope that many families in this community will look at community college as a way to really have an affordable college education. You can start it early, as it sounds like freshman year you did. So it's just exciting. I just want to see it expanded. So I know that we're at Western right now, and with a dynamite leader here before us, and making it happen with JCPS and the team for career and college. So what can we do? Like, is it agreements with JCTC to expand to another school? Is it, I don't know. What is it? How can we do this? How does this, how do we do more?
I think we're doing more right now because we're having conversations about, I'm sorry. I think we are starting to do more in that we are having conversations about all of the various pathways that we can find at all of our schools to try to get students started early. So I think it's a matter of simply making those connections. We are in a lot of schools, we've done a lot of things, but there certainly is more room to grow, and particularly to grow in a very intentional way of creating these pathways very early on for students.
From a funding perspective, how does it work if you are going in the afternoon to college at JCTC? You're leaving your school at JCPS and you're traveling to the junior college. Is the per pupil spending going to the junior college for that half day? Is it because you're not at JCPS? How is this working? How are we paying for, how is it free at Western?
For Western High School, when we initially started our grant partnership with Jefferson Community and Technical College, they were very gracious to offer tuition waivers. When Governor Bevins and the KIA Scholarship came about, it actually created a bottom in terms of a price tag for college credit, which is now $52. So Western High School actually submitted a budget request because this was given to us late in the summer, and we were able to, through the approval of the district, was able to sustain our program into this year with a budget request. And so the goal would be to try to continue to find funding to offer disadvantaged students the opportunity to not have to pay $52, which can become very costly for them. But at the same time, we also know that there are opportunities that if we were able to get more staff members certified to be able to teach courses within our school, that could also help lower the price tag, create MOA in order to be able to continue to offer this experience not only at Western, but that is also another solution for expanding it across the district. However, I will say, and I do agree with the academy model, trying to become very specific and making sure that we're helping guide students towards a future career with the dual credit opportunity, that becomes something that's very, very worthwhile in terms of our choice to fund.
As we align our career pathways as well, we're working with our business partners to clean up what they want and get those aligned. And then as we systematically work through our partners, articulated agreement also is a nice opportunity that if I'm going to Murray in agriculture, I may take 6 to 9 hours at Seneca. No money may have to change hands. But it's articulated. I don't have to take those courses when I get to Murray. If we communicate, a lot of times our kids will use articulated agreements. We have the MOUs, but it's difficult to connect that student to that college and take advantage of that. So we've got to make sure we're auditing every articulated MOU that we have and make sure our students are aware. So dual credit, AP credit, IB Baccalaureate, Cambridge, plus articulated credits, lots of different terms for our kiddos, and it's a big education curve, and we're going to really collaborate and work hard and make sure every single pathway has this aligned so they're getting it in career and technical and in core subject as well. And so we're going to hit them from both sides.
And if I might add, one of the highlights I would also make in terms of the other colleges that we are partnered with, and this will come in the board update as well, but just for the sake of the question, Bellarmine, Campbellsville, Spalding, Kentucky State, Moorhead, Murray, University of Louisville, Western Kentucky, and of course JCTC are a part of our 8 partner schools. So that's important to note as we explore opportunity.
Member Gies.
Just out of curiosity, at Western High School, and perhaps as this program continues to expand, do you have any data that collects and can recognize the students enrolled in the associate's degree program who may be first-generation college students?
That is something that we can definitely provide for you. We do know our students very well at Western, and so I could probably quickly sit down and talk about each student that's in the on-campus program as well as others, but we can provide an update on that.
Absolutely. If you could get that data, I think that would be something helpful for your organization as well, and also to pinpoint those students who do not have a parent who attended college. I myself am a first-generation college student and was able to benefit from AP, IB, and a number of dual credit courses as well. But I think that this would be an excellent bridge for our first-generation college students, because from my personal experience, had it not been for Maritza Cassidy at Atherton High School, our counselor, it would have been very difficult for me to get to college. And I think this program has an outstanding opportunity for those students who are first-generation college-minded. And also, I must throw out a huge compliment to Western High being in my district. I'm very proud of that.
Further questions? Okay, I have a couple. So first of all, I want to thank the entire team for coming here and discussing this. I know we've had some discussions regarding some of this within our work sessions, and I do want to reiterate a couple of those points and ask a couple of those questions just so the general audience kind of gets an idea of what we're talking about here. And I do want to share Dr. Herring's comment about for Ms. Reyes. Yeah, your parents is not going to have to wait until graduation to be proud of you. So I can tell you that right now. So my first question actually is to you, Ms. Reyes, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but you know, one of the concerns that I have that Principal Newman had mentioned that, you know, with the executive order, there's now a cost associated with it. I understand that JCTC now has a base level. We had kind of negotiated a price of free, but KCTCS as a system statewide, which I think this executive order does help more students, but because of that, we established a level, which, as you said, Principal Newman, I think, what was it, $60,000 extra that we approved, something along those lines. We, with the help of the with our educational foundation, to help support this program. So, but now we're getting to a point where if the student doesn't pass the course, then that cost comes back over to the district. And I have a concern from a counselor's perspective that unconsciously there might be a bias against that. But what, and this is circling back to you, Ms. Reyes. So my concern is, you know, you had mentioned your confidence, your great confidence in being able to go to college. Do you feel and speaking on behalf of some of your classmates who aren't here, do you feel that being able to get there and just take a course that you're just taking a chance on it? You know, it isn't like, oh, I'm taking basket weaving, I know I can pass that, right? We're talking about, wow, you know, college algebra, you know, I'm kind of shaky on this, but I have an opportunity to take it in here, and I hope my school doesn't get stuck with the bill. But do you feel people taking that chance? And if so, how is that, even if they possibly don't pass it, how do you think that's affecting their confidence? I have a suspicion it's increasing it, but I'd like to hear if you've had those discussions with any of your classmates.
So I think that we are really blessed to have two college advisors. They're always on our backs. They're like our college mothers. They do not want to see us fail. So I don't really think that failing is really an option for us. But there are consequences if you do fail a class. You're automatically removed from the program. But I just think that having that in the back of our heads, like, oh my God, like I'm going to be removed from the program. Like, no, because it's a really big thing to be in, and I don't think that anyone would want to take the chances to fail. I think that, talking on behalf of my classmates, they're really working really hard to get there. And if they do fail a class, I'm pretty sure that they've still learned how to take responsibilities and, like, you know, learn from their mistakes, still transitioning to the real world.
And I'll give Principal Newman a chance to comment. You know your students as well.
Yes. And the one thing I just want to add is there's a lot of research and a lot of theory behind social capital and the opportunity for students to be able to be exposed to success, exposed to college. Obviously, if you're a first generation college goer, you're not going to have that social capital be successful. So being very intentional in the design of a school or in the design of a program, especially the CTE work, is going to be very important for us to look at what type of academic supports that we can provide that build social capital for our students and basically accept nothing less but success. But when we do fall, because that's going to happen, I mean, everyone fails, but at some point, at something, how do we pick ourselves back up and make ourselves recover and move forward? And so we teach those lessons, and I think that, you know, we just need to look very specifically at what we can do based on the needs of our students at each individual school.
All right, thank you. My second question is, I'm going to go to Christy Rogers here. This isn't necessarily something the board has within its power, possibly JCTC, but I know that staff certification has been an issue. You'd mentioned that, Principal Newman had mentioned it, and understanding that you have a mic, a camera, and an audience, could you maybe address that or any other issues you think that are challenges to this program, something that we as a community might need to be aware of, or have the ability to speak to that to make things a little bit easier to be able to get this program to be more successful within our district or within school districts statewide.
Yeah. Well, certifying teachers will have to be a focus. That's the cheapest way to provide dual credit, where we're getting it internally inside our high schools where I can teach English, senior English, and be dual certified. So investing in our teachers long-term, a little strategy, stackable credentials, if you will, the badges to help our teachers get that layered credential is very, very valuable. And that's going to be our cheapest long-term plan. Sneaking up on our boys in career and technical, and our girls, non-traditional, first-time goers, putting that in career and technical programs. It's going to be a second avenue that's really going to help this. It's got to be a focused effort. The academy coaches that are in our budget request will be quasi-parents for non-traditional students to pass these courses. It doesn't come easy. When that first-time student takes a college class, and the rigor of that class, the safety nets have to be there. And we will be responsible for that college scholarship that gets revoked back to us if they fail. So it's not an easy fix. They just don't go in and magically pass dual credit. It takes a lot of work, especially when you're coaching and encouraging non-traditional students to meet that benchmark to do that. So the best way to expand this is our teacher certification, finding a long-term plan to help our teachers grow so we can teach it inside. Working with our partners to get the articulated agreements, growing them in this career and technical, being very deliberate and intentional on what we do. Not sure I'm hitting every question there. There's multiple levels.
Well, I'm more concerned about one, what we can do,
Yeah.
and two, what do you need from either partners or community to be able to accomplish that?
Transportation for our students to college campus is a challenge. Books and fees tend to add in there. This is just strictly tuition, so when we're talking about books, different high schools, I know Fairdale helps with books, Butler's done some things, principals are doing some special programs on the side internally with their own school budgets, but as a school district, it's costly as they move up the line. So I don't even think we've scratched the surface yet of what these problems and challenges, and I think we'll bring them to you as we really start to look at what they are as they unfold. Career and technical, they're going to need tools and equipment when they work through certain pathways. And I think it'll just unfold as we process, but we're really focused on it. It's a passion of mine that these CTE programs rise to a bigger level and rigor. And, I just think we're going to get there. And I'm just not sure every challenge until we, the challenge of the scholarship, it hit so late. This team right here scrambled trying to figure it out. We talked about it. It was difficult. We had negotiated free. So for Western, it was tough, but we didn't leave. We scrambled and found a way to support those students. And it's in our budget request from my office to extend it a couple more years until we can solve the Talent Academy model rolls into place. And we stay with our promise, so you'll see that. But it's in every high school, our dual credit programs. And maybe someone else can speak to that specific question about the challenges.
Well, I guess I'm thinking about just reaffirming Ms. Rogers' point around being able to empower more teachers to become certified. Yeah. That becomes in-house, that becomes less cost, even when we think about costs associated with textbooks, et cetera. The more we can do that, perhaps target, have a goal number around X number of years, but building that capacity just from practices in other places, I think is an excellent way to build capacity to provide more opportunity for students. And that can be done in partnership with our post-secondary partners. So I would offer that as a very serious consideration for us to embrace it in terms of moving forward.
One other big thing in the Talent Academy specifically is an addition of counselors to lower that number for student ratio. They're critical. They're going to start counseling students in the freshman year. We want college credit to start early and often, 9th grade, 10th grade. It's going to take a lot of support from these folks, and a 1 to 500, 1 to 600 ratio is just tough. So that's why there's an expansion into the small learning communities, and you'll see those key positions help get those kids aligned, get them counseled, and get every student because it's personalized. It's personalized learning, and that's going to be our challenge. And we're set up to do that very thing, and that's why it's critical for those positions.
All right. Member Duncan.
Oh, Michael, do you have any idea if you're drawing kids from outside of Western's district, do you have an idea about the number of kids you're drawing from outside of Western's district?
I am proud to sit here today and say that we service the majority of our students from within our resides. And so we have a few students, less than 10, that apply to come in from outside of our resides. So we're very proud to say that we service our own students.
Very good. Thank you.
Member Porter.
Thank you for your report. Very good information. I think it might be information that the board would like to see as we talk about articulation agreements, because they have been around for a very long time. Maybe in a Friday update you could show us school by school what the articulation agreements look like, because that's important for us to know. And the other thing that I would have a question about, as we talk about opportunities and making sure we have opportunities for all of our students, we know that Career and Tech Ed keeps students in schools. Do we have any opportunities like this for our students in alternative schools?
We've started discussion on it. Our TAP programs, it's a part of the plan. We're not there yet. We want to use our schools in the evening, maybe alternate times to get them there. But currently they're not in place. Our TAP programs have early childhood, a few things, but not a way to complete. They're only there for a short time and return back. It's on the radar. It's got to be a long-term plan. They need the education the most. We can't lose those kiddos. But right now there's not career and technical in those programs. Katie and I have talked about it. We're going to work towards that. And I think you'll see something rolling out, a plan to get those students certified, get them early college, get them started on certifications. And I think our lane, College and Career Readiness, CTE world, is the place for those kids to flourish.
Okay, if I understand correctly, you said TAP programs, right?
Yes.
Teenage parent programs.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I would also ask that you look and in some way try to analyze or to ask interest from the students that are in our other alternative programs, because that will keep them in school, and we will offer them an opportunity for a trade, or that will take them to a different career level. It keeps them in school. Absolutely. The research shows that there's no reason that we should not extend this opportunity to other students. Alternative schools are our schools also.
I totally agree, and it's on our radar. I think when we did our original presentation, I mentioned they're not forgotten. They're just on the list to work through as we continue to grow our program. So absolutely, you'll see some information about that.
Any further discussion? All right, so once again, thank you to everyone and to the team, and also to Ms. Reyes for coming here tonight and sharing the student voice. That's something that this board really values and we don't get enough of. So thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so now we're on to our next agenda item. I misread our agenda earlier. There will be 3 information items, not just 2. We're going to go to item B, and then item C will become the KDE management review letter. Item B is the proposed board agenda pilot for March and May of 2017. Again, no speakers on this item. The reason that we're bringing that, I thought it might be a good idea to bring this as an informational item, is to open the discussion between the board members to discuss how we want to arrange this piloting next month, the business meeting, and then the regular meeting would be the second meeting of that month. And I know that Member Horn during our last board meeting had mentioned trying to have a way of bringing or kind of creating the agenda meeting that Vice Chair Wilner and I have into the board discussion, and this is a way of doing that. So I'm going to open the floor up to anyone that wants to discuss this. If you look within your agenda, if you're looking online with the attachments, one of those attachments will give you 2 columns. One column will be the business meeting. The second column will be the general meeting. Angie, if there's a way you might be able to bring that up on the screen, that'd be great. So, and the idea is, what do we want to do on each of these columns? As you can see up here on the screen, you know, the column on the far left, it says basically, do you want to include this item on the business meeting? And on the general meeting on your right, which would be the second meeting of the month, what items are included, which items are not. So I want to open it up to, I know you all had a chance to review this during the last few days prior to this meeting, so I want to open it up now if there's any discussion on this, or I can talk a little bit more. Member Geese.
Yes, I'd like to thank Mr. Lowe for developing this. I think it's an excellent plan just upon my first analysis of the document. One thing that I noticed underneath the first meeting agenda is that there is a question mark next to speakers on non-agenda items. And I know that that's something that we're discussing here today. So I wanted to bring that up. I believe that we should keep speakers on non-agenda items at each meeting. I don't want to see this or have this misconstrued in any way as an opportunity to stifle public input into the board. And I think just as a common courtesy, if we've had it, as we've had speakers speak, or the availability for them to speak at each meeting, that we should continue that. Even though by doing this, we're trying to make it leaner, I still think we should keep that opportunity to speak at all of our meetings.
And that's a definite good point. And that's the reason there's a question mark there. It's not a hard yes, not a hard no, and that's
Right.
part of the discussion here. You know, I want to always give the opportunity to have transparency and give the ability for anyone to discuss, to approach the board and discuss issues. We're basing this in large part off of Fayette County's board or business meeting model and their general meeting model. And on their model, they don't have public speakers for the business meetings. So I wanted to have a discussion on that as to whether or not we want to do that, because the idea is to try and have the business meeting be lean and mean, the way I look at it, where it's just bare minimum. And my view is that we try it bare minimum first, and then later on we decide to add stuff. That's a little bit easier than starting with a lot of stuff and then kind of going the other way. But I'm not, you know, committed to either one of those. It's just I'm trying to follow the model that that we've seen demonstrated before. Also, one other item, I also want to mention that at our meeting, our work session meeting, when we've talked about this in just general terms, not the nitty-gritty detail that we're doing so here, Member Porter had asked if we might be able to meet with some of the board members from Fayette County to kind of discuss this. I've reached out to their chairperson. I have not heard back as of yet. But just want to throw that out there because I know Member Porter, that was a great suggestion for Member Porter, and that didn't go unheeded. But I just have yet to hear any communication on that. So did anyone want to chime in? I'm going to go to Member Duncan. That way we can swing back around. So Member Duncan.
Well, I just wanted to check with Dr. Harkins to make sure that you see advantages to this or no overwhelming disadvantages to this, because I mean this is really your recommendation. So what how do you feel about this?
Well, the agenda, actually, the format stays the same. You just emphasize in the first meeting information type items. So it would give the board, the advantages, it gives the board the opportunity to discuss things that are coming up, and so that you really have that opportunity that you've talked about having. And so anything, and it allows for anything that's time sensitive to be approved so that we don't lose anything that we have to have. But it also says to the staff, put most things on that second meeting. So as board members, as you're reviewing things that you actually have to approve, you're doing that one time a month, the majority of them, as opposed to twice a month. Mm-hmm. So I think it will be beneficial to us, and it will be beneficial to you as well. And it's just going to be getting in the momentum of how it works.
Okay.
Vice Chair Wilner? I'm sorry.
I'll be quick. I just want to say I agree with keeping the public speakers at both meetings. I think sometimes we need to hear from the public speakers in advance so that we have time to take those considerations into our thinking before the meeting where we would actually be voting. So I just want to lend my support to that view.
Member Porter.
I like the idea of piloting this. I would like feedback from the staff, because this is asking them to do their work differently, in that they're getting things to us at earlier for us to discuss. And in looking at this format, my question becomes, as we continue to add to our planning calendar, how will we take care of the items that we continue to throw up there when we have a list, many items on the planning calendar that we want to discuss? If we have 2 work sessions a month that will deal with whatever's on the planning calendar, once upon a time we cleared the slate on that, but we have an enormous amount of things that we want to discuss. So how will we manage that work?
Well, 2 things about that. One, when we were looking at the planning calendar at our last agenda setting meeting, we noticed that there were probably a few things that were already addressed. So, or at least on the on-deck issues, that they may not be in the planning calendar section over here, but similar to what Jonathan has been keeping track of. And we're going to go through that and create more of a, once we go through it and clear out what has already been addressed and what is still outstanding, to kind of shorten that list, to get an idea of more of, you know, what we need to discuss. And that's part of the idea behind having this business meeting, is to where we have, you know, like Dr. Harkins had mentioned, that would be more of a in-depth discussion to where we can do those things. And on that particular meeting where we had discussed having different having more of the work sessions would be more geared toward dealing with those items that are still on the on-deck issues list. And then that would flow into the general meeting, which would still be set at 7 o'clock, because we had already set that as for our entire year. But then when we go over to the actual general meeting, I'm going to say second regular meeting, then that would be a little bit more focused on just the approval of stuff, and assuming that the discussion had already taken place. So you can not, Dr. Harkins, do you want to chime in, or member?
I would just like to say that when we saw the meeting in Lexington with the board, it was an informative meeting to ask strategic questions. It was not to dig into the weeds per se, because we can spend a lot of time in the weeds. But so I think that if we are able to, when we are able to meet with the Lexington Fayette board to ask specifically how they stay on policy and governance versus being in the weeds, I think that would be very helpful for us.
Okay. Member Geese.
Also, circling back to our public speakers on non-agenda items, something that I've sought to do since being elected to the board is establish a precedent by which we hear from those speakers earlier in the meeting as a respect to public opinion, and truly showing that we value public opinion on this board. For the purposes of this pilot, could we entertain the motion of moving item 12 to, as we've done since my election to the board, getting that item ahead of our report from our superintendent for the purposes of the pilot?
Before I answer that, we had a similar discussion about that, because there is, like within board policy, a defined outline of how the items are in order. So I would like to turn it over either to Jonathan or Jonathan Lowe, our Director of Strategy, Frank, or Dr. Harkins, whoever would be appropriate to talk about that.
I defer to General Counsel, because I don't know that you can amend a future meeting, which is amend the agenda of a future meeting. I don't know if policy.
Well, I think that's correct. The amendment would have to take place at the meeting, but are you asking about changing the policy to
no, not changing the
reflect?
policy. Well, in this particular case, because I think there's an existing policy that directly addresses this issue, okay, then we may not be able to, in this meeting, do what Member Geese is suggesting, where we would rearrange the agenda for that meeting that would be upcoming, because I'm just trying to figure out how we would do that unless we were possibly take a motion in this meeting to amend the agenda for that. I'm not even sure if that's an appropriate policy or appropriate direction to take this in.
01.45 has the board meeting agenda listed like that. So we had talked about amending this board policy to move that permanently. So
That goes
would
through
be
policy committee.
Right, so that would be my suggestion, that be the first thing that the policy committee do, is amend that board policy to have that done permanently. So
do you understand where that's coming from? Because,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just channeling through the appropriate channel up through the policy committee. I'm certainly respectful of that. And so far it hasn't been a problem amending the agenda, and I'm happy to do that until we get this as a concrete policy. My only question is that something that we would add to that planning calendar, or how do we go about getting that taken care of?
That would, as I said, that needs to go through the policy committee. Policy committee chair and vice chairs have been selected. Mm-hmm. It's up to the chairs of those committees to start pulling together those memberships and establishing the meeting schedule and going from that point. My interpretation of what we've already have approved is that those policy recommendations would first go through committee. We deferred that at our field elementary school meeting. And then once they come back, they've had a chance to go through that committee for discussion, they would come before the board for us to be able to approve. So that's the process as I understand it. Member Porter.
One other thought as we talk about our speakers, I think that we want our speakers to be heard. When we have students like tonight, we had a student that came in and was part of a presentation. I would like for us to be aware that we're bringing students to the table as well, and be mindful of their time and the staff that we are having. At our last meeting, we barely got to our action item by 9:30. And for those people that are watching us on TV, everybody does not live stream us. We want the community also to see the work of the board, so that would be something that you would manage based on the number of speakers we have. But I think we have to be aware that when we have speakers, students who really add value added to our presentations, let's be aware of the fact that they have a school day the next day in many cases, and staff also that are coming in to make presentations, because we want it to be realistic about what's happening in the school. So I would just encourage us to be mindful of the opportunity for the public speakers. That's very important, but it's also important that we recognize that we may have students and staff at the table, and to try to make our work. I don't know, I don't have the answer, but we need to look at it carefully. If the message from the board meeting is the action items, we would like for people to see that, I would hope, before 9 or 9:30.
Okay, and perhaps that could be something that would go through policy. When we have a speaker that is a student, then that will take precedent, maybe as a separate type of speaker section, perhaps. I think that's a good point. Any further discussion or any further points? Okay, so looking at this and looking at these two columns, I just want to ask board members, just again for general discussion, do you see anything? I'm going to assume the question mark is yes here on the first column, but looking at these two, do you see anything that needs to be changed, or is this the format in which we want to try and pilot this for our next two board meetings next month? Vice Chair Boehner.
Just a quick question. So I see it would be that we would not have information items in the second meeting. I could imagine a scenario where it might be really important to have an information item. So my preference would be for that to just be that it would be our goal not to have any, but keep open the possibility as needed.
And I believe that's the reason why we are keeping the same format as Dr. Hargens had mentioned, in case there is a pressing issue. We have the flexibility to do that, but generally no would be the item, would be the response for that. And of course, the corresponding issue over here would be no action items for the business meeting.
If I could just say, it'll be a work in progress, because in Fayette, all the consent agenda items were there at the first meeting that would be approved on the second meeting. It's understandably going to take time to adjust, so don't expect to see all of those like 4 weeks in advance. But we're going to try to put as many items as we can, knowing that you'll have additional items the second meeting. But you'll still have the same time to review them all.
And if you're wondering why one of the reasons we're discussing this particular item here out in the open is because we want to also telegraph to the community that we're looking at piloting something, so we do make changes. It isn't suddenly, oh, the board is doing something different. Well, we are doing something different, but we're letting you know that we're about to do something different, so there isn't a surprise. So, any other further discussion? All right. So, hearing that there is no other discussion, may I have a vote to receive the proposed proposed pilot agenda pilot for March and for May 2017? We'll skip April because April only has 1 month or one meeting in that month. Is there a motion? Member Horn motions. Is there a second? Vice Chair Wilner seconds. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Chair Brady, could we go back and receive the motion to receive the report on
Thank you so much.
Dual credit?
Also, thank you for that, Frank. Motion to receive the dual credit early college and partnership with JCTC. Motion by Member Horn. Second. Motion made by second made by Member Porter. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously on that. Thank you again. All right, now we're going to come to informational item C. This is what was amended. This is what was added by Vice Chair Wilner, and this is regarding the KDE Management Review Letter. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chair Wilner to discuss this item.
So my intention is not to spring any surprises. I just wanted us to be able to have a conversation about this. As I have, read the management review letter, and read it again and read it again, it struck me that a couple of the items are specifically about the board, policies that the board adopted. And so it occurred to me, and I just wanted to express my perspective. It's my understanding that the management is working on a response to the management review letter, but I wondered if it might be a good idea also for the board to have its own response specifically to the items where the board is mentioned.
Is there any discussion on this item or on Vice Chair's Wilner's suggestion? Member Horn.
I agree and would agree with that concern, and would like to have that opportunity not only to see management's response before it is submitted, but also to have our attorney receive any kind of correspondence, because I feel like we have our superintendent is our agent, but I also would like in this circumstance to have another, to have the board be able to have the window into how the district is responding and when.
Before, that sounds like a motion, but before I ask for a motion on that, I want to encourage any other further discussion before we circle back to that.
I just want to clarify, I was not expecting that tonight we would craft a response to KDE, but just the idea of a response directly from the board in addition to the management response.
Okay. And just to clarify, I was referring back to requiring correspondence to go through the board. All right, Member Duncan.
Well, that was originally, I wanted to ask Frank if, in his opinion, the board needed to have its own response to this, or if the superintendent's response would be what we would use. I mean, there were things that were attributed to us in it as well. But in your opinion, do you think that requires a response from us?
The letter on its face doesn't require a response from anybody, nor does the statute require a response, but a response would be appropriate, and if the board wishes to submit its own, that could be within the board's discretion to do so, but it's not legally required.
Okay.
Further discussion? Member Horn.
I would like to have you, Frank, in talking to some other school board attorneys, they have said that it has been known to happen that in a situation like we're experiencing right now, that the board is privy to communication, so that we are kept in the loop. And is that something that you could be in that loop, or?
We're working on a draft response. As Frank said, it's not required, but the intention is to let the board, give the board the draft response and Frank, so that you see before anything is submitted to the commissioner.
And then just the correspondence, further correspondence, that's great. I would appreciate that. And then and I think the board would too. I think everybody would. But then as this evolves, will we be able to see how this is evolving? How will we be kept apprised? How will we be informed as this evolves?
Well, and actually, so we got the letter. The letter does not request a response, but what staff has done is gone through every item and provided information. So we've created a draft that we intend to give to the board so that you can look at it. So anything we send, but really what the letter says is that we're waiting for communication from KDE about when the management audit will happen. So, and the letter says that we'll be notified, a team will be here for 10 to 14 days, so very much like any of the audits that we've had. So, but we thought it would be proactive to go ahead and respond with information that we readily have available, so that would give perhaps a head start. So, but that's the plan right now, but we won't communicate anything without the board knowing, or as soon as we know when the team will be coming, I will immediately let the board know. So every step of the way to answer your question.
Member Porter.
If the Friday update could give us a list of the audits that we've had over time and the responses that we've made, and whether the board has made separate responses or everything has been combined. We have had a number of audits in this district, and I mean, whatever this board decides to do, but historically there has been, whenever we have responded, it has covered everything in one document. So it would be helpful for the board in the Friday update just to see the number of audits we have and what the response was. But to my knowledge, I don't remember that we've done separate responses, but we covered everything in one response back, just for historical information, so we will know.
Just to Member Porter's point, my experience has been that as well. And also just to provide some context, where we've had a number of audits. Most of those audits, if not all of them that I'm aware of, are audits that we've actually voluntarily asked for, if that's correct. So, but I know we responded. So, but I didn't want to give the impression that this is an ongoing thing. Most of these things are things that we have asked for folks to look at our system, so we get a sense of where we are and where we need to go. Is there further discussion? Okay. So I hate to be a stickler on this, but I want to refer back once more to legal counsel regarding Member Horn's suggestion about correspondence going through. What I kind of hear is that it's more of an agreement, not necessarily that there has to be required action. So I just want to make sure that a motion is not necessarily needed.
I think a motion is not needed. I think
Okay.
there's an understanding about how it's going to work.
That's what I need to know. Okay. So is there, once more, any further discussion on this matter? All right. Hearing that, I will vote to receive this discussion regarding the KDE management, or ask for a motion to receive this motion, or this KDE management review letter discussion. Is there such a motion? Member Duncan moves. Is there a second? Member Horn seconds. All those in favor? The vote is unanimous. Item passes. At this time, that concludes our information items, and we will now move on to the consent calendar. However, before we do so, I will notice that we have lost our feed for our TV feed, and I also know that we've been sitting here for 2.5 hours. So I'd like to take a moment to go into a 10-minute recess for everyone to be able to get a chance to stretch and move around. So we'll come back at, we'll say 9:45. It's 9-minute recess. Are we on back? Yep, now we're on. All right, so I hate to draw the break to a close, but we need to come back to order. At this time, we are going to present the consent calendar. At this point, there are no speakers on the consent calendar. However, we do have one request to pull down item 9J, which is the approval of district facilities plan, hearing report, and district facilities plan. And that's items going to be pulled down to be voted as a separate item. Are there any other items that board members wish to pull down from the consent calendar?
Can
Member
I
Horn.
ask who pulled that item down?
Member Porter. Any other items? Going once, going twice? Okay. So what I would like to know if we might have a motion to approve the consent calendar minus item 9.J. Is there a motion? Motion made by Member Duncan. Is there a second? Second made by Chair Brady. All those in favor of approving the consent calendar minus item 9J, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now we're going to move on to item 9J, which again, Member Porter brought down, and it is the approval of district facilities plan, hearing report, and district facilities plan. Member Porter.
One question was, there was a meeting held to ratify or whatever, so I'd like to know how many people attended the meeting.
Other than staff, no one attended.
I'm sorry?
Other than staff, no one attended.
How did we advertise the meeting?
We advertised it as applicable by law. It was in the Courier Journal, and I believe it was on our district calendar on the website.
Okay. That's a concern, and it's not the first time I've mentioned that. But I asked that this be pulled down so that we could vote separately, because my position is the same as it was the last time. I realize that this is a document that must go to Frankfurt, but to say that it's okay means that it's okay. It's not okay for me based on what I know about the facilities. I will not stop the document going to Frankfurt, but I think to have a unanimous decision for something that we continue to talk about. It's my understanding that the foundation met at Mill Creek Elementary School, and someone asked about the media center there, and they were told that when the principal arrived at that school, she was on the list for a media center. Hasn't happened yet. May have been 16 years or some ridiculous amount of time. So I understand that we have to send this to Frankfurt because it's required, but someone needs to understand that if we're sending something, there should be some substance to it. And we know that, and thank you for letting me chair the facilities committee, which means I won't shut up, obviously. But I will not vote for, that's why I will not vote for this. So thank you. I just wanted to ask the question, when did we have the meeting? We've got to do better. People need to trust that their word matters, and maybe they would come to meetings, whatever the case may be. But Dr. Kolb and I are going to be working on facilities, so thank you for that opportunity moving forward. That is why I will not vote for this, yes, for this particular item.
And I completely understand your position. I share many of the same sentiments that you share. I'm very excited to be moving forward with you and Mr. Kolb to work toward a actual viable document that actually says when and what will be done and what will be done next after that, and sort of a vision for where we're moving as a district. I do want to let board members know that in order for us to do any of our capital projects, we have to approve this document, so the things we already have on tap for this summer. But at the same time, I can appreciate Ms. Porter's position and the position of those who voted in opposition last time. We are going to work to fix this problem. That is my commitment. As I've told you before, this is a bureaucratic list that really tells us nothing and does nothing. And now it's time for the real work to start. We know what the problem is, and I think we've got some smart people who can get in the room with us and help us fix it.
Let me ask one other question based on all the legislation that's floating around in Frankfurt now. That list won't mean anything. At the end of the day, if anything passes that's in Frankfurt right now, as it pertains to taking away transportation and going to a neighborhood schools or something like that, that won't, I mean, to give us one elementary school to be built at a to be determined location, that won't help us get to where we need to be as a district. I'm not predicting, I'm not a fortune teller. This is something that we must do. I will not vote for it. That's all I'm gonna say.
And
I'm not arguing.
No,
I'm
you're
just-
right. You're right. Right now, with as my team was modeling the shift, you know, we're looking at population shifts in buildings that I very well may have recommended not to remain open. Now will be overcrowded. So, you know, we're entering a brave new world here that we're going to have to want to see how everything shakes out, what we need to do as a district to move forward. But again, the meat of that document is every one of our buildings and the critical things that need to be done to those buildings, and that building can't be touched in that way unless we have that on that list. If we have new things arise, we can reopen the district facilities plan, add additional schools, add additional projects, and there's a fairly quick process for doing that.
Member Horn.
I will join Ms. Porter in just rejecting this facility plan for the reason that it is a laundry list, and it doesn't, you know, I've come to the conclusion for myself that I need to work toward finding the funding streams to actually activate a facility plan. So I think we have two very competent people that can take on the work of the facility plan. I'm interested in trying to take on the finance team to try to look and figure out our funding sources for the facility, because until we can, it's kind of it's the other side of the same coin. So we have some tough decisions to make, because we do need, if there is change is coming, then we're going to have both sides of the same coin worked on. Right now we have a policy governance committee and a facility committee, which is absolutely necessary. I applaud this board for committing your time and effort and designing a calendar that will support it on a monthly basis, to have a committee scheduled in a reasonable time frame. And I look forward to the formation of a finance team, but I cannot support this current facilities plan.
Further discussion? Just one question. Again, we certainly understand the frustrations that are being expressed here, but from a policy and compliance, I guess, standpoint, this is another situation that if this doesn't go to Frankfurt through this board, then the district will lose money for facilities, and this is kind of the same thing that was brought up at a previous board meeting. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, and I would echo the need for increased finances toward the facilities. To Ms. Porter's point earlier, we have approximately 150 buildings. We work hard to perhaps get in 5 each year, using the majority of our capital funding each year available to do so. That puts us at about 30 years. So if you're on a media center list,
right,
you know, that doesn't help. So I would echo that, and Mr. Hudson and I have worked on hoping to find some innovative ways to free up some capital that we can bring to the facilities committee, as well as talking about some innovative and exciting things that could possibly rally the community around more emphasis to do so.
Okay. All right, seeing that there's no other interest in having further discussion, I would like to ask for a motion to approve item 9J from the consent calendar, approval of district facilities plan hearing report and district facilities plan. Is there a motion? Member Kolb motions, a second by Member Duncan. All those in favor? 5. All opposed? 2. Motion passes. Thank you. At this time, that concludes our consent agenda items, and it is now time to move on to our board planning calendar. Is there any discussion regarding the board planning calendar? Member Duncan.
Just like to add, at the end, maybe at the end of the year, we need to hear from Frost and Stewart. I'd like to have kind of a picture of what that's been like for this year.
All right. Was that clear to everyone? Okay, good. Any other discussion? Member Geese.
Yes, recently the Kentucky Secretary of State's office, in conjunction with a number of academic institutions, including the nonpartisan McConnell Center at the University of Louisville, released the Kentucky Civic Health Index. And I'm bringing this up primarily because of our students at Central who spoke so eloquently on the United States Constitution and how so many American citizens, Kentucky citizens, have an abysmal knowledge of our civics and the roles of government. Kentucky placed 30 on the list out of our 50 states for civic knowledge. I've been approached by their office and the nonpartisan McConnell Center and bringing this information to the board in order to make a presentation on the Kentucky Civic Health Index in a nonpartisan manner, and also to share some resources that, again, the nonpartisan McConnell Center implements for our Kentucky teachers of history, civics, and economics. They recently completed their most recent pool of applicants for their Teacher Scholar program, in which they have teachers in eastern Kentucky willing to make a 2-hour drive into Louisville, but not one applicant from Jefferson County Public Schools. And so working to see how can we build that network and alerting our JCPS teachers that since U of L is right in our backyard, how can we work to switch that brain drain for Kentucky Civic Health and get teachers free professional development that may help to assist that within Jefferson County.
Okay, so is the question to actually have a presentation be put on the calendar to
Yes,
address this
Chairman.
particular? Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to refer back to Superintendent because on the one hand, I understand where Member Geese is going with this. On the other hand, I don't know if there's that current JCPS involvement, then I'm not sure if we've had an agenda item or a presentation item that really wasn't directly presented to the board without some type of involvement by the district. And maybe I'm wrong in that assumption.
Well, and we'll look at it, but Mr. Geese, what you're saying is we have the opportunity to be involved. We just miss out on that opportunity. So it's really to learn more about it. So,
Yes, strictly informational.
right. We will look into it and find out more information.
I hope you understand my concern about that is that I don't have so much concern about this particular item as it is setting precedent for other things. So
Absolutely, and my
okay.
intent in bringing it up is simply to get
I
that
totally
conversation
understand.
started.
Nope, totally get it, and I understand where you're coming from. Any other further discussion? Member Horn.
My hope is that this calendar, agenda planning calendar discussion can actually place items on the agenda. Is that a correct assumption that we can, as a board, today look at like March? We heard from our independent auditor about, a few weeks ago, but he said he needed to come back, and we should schedule him for March, one of those days. So do we want to do that, like actually add the item so we can approve it with that addition? Because last board meeting, we had a lot of ideas, and the only thing that it seems like the only thing that made it on was that we moved the formative evaluation, which you moved, and so it was like your item got on there and got moved, but every other board member, it really wasn't done. And then items were placed on our agenda that were not on the planning calendar that we approved last week, 2 weeks ago. So I'm confused at this. So I think probably the best thing would be to take it to the policy committee and refer the question of how things get, we put it on the planning calendar, then that's approved. The next meeting, you're not like adding items unless, you should be bringing them up at our planning time the time before. So I'd like to just throw it to the policy committee if possible, if they're, recommend that item be added to the policy committee to discuss what is the, and so then you get to the idea of, are we, this planning, agenda planning, that this time we're taking, is it a waste of time if it's just continually going to go onto the on deck? Linda Duncan I went back and reviewed the last year and a half of planning agenda minutes, and there are things that Linda mentioned, I swear to God, almost every single meeting, and they never, ever, ever made it on the calendar for planning. And it's every single agenda. I mean, Angie may just cut and paste because it's the same thing every time. And so I'm confused. I just would love to do it today. I'd love to say, like, there's some things that we've mentioned. Ms. Duncan, you could say them, like, what do you mention every single time?
Well, one is the administrators, when we decide that, and I think that's going to come in the tentative budget. I believe, I think Cordelia said that, but yes, that was one of those things that I'd asked for in May to be on there. March, the report on facilities from the facilities committee meeting and coming up with at least a discussion of what the plan might start to look like. But yeah, that was another one. And well, we've done a couple of things.
Actually, that one did get added. The
Yeah, I thought so.
facilities and technology infrastructure. That is in March.
Where is that?
It's March 21st, the
Okay.
second one.
Yeah, that one did get on there.
Okay. And then what about the compensation? What she's asking for is the compensation informational related to, when
Administrator's pay.
Cordelia and Tom, do you want to deal with that? I mean, can we, I'm not asking them, but I'm like, when do,
2 meetings from now.
Huh?
2 meetings from now.
Uh-huh.
That's
Is
what-
that, can we just okay, I'd like to, reserve that as an amendment, okay? So then when we approve this, if you all vote for it, you know what I mean? How do you, so are we going to have, how do we amend this? Is this something that needs to go to the policy committee also on how to amend the calendar?
My understanding is that, one, I think that's a fair point, but my understanding is from existing policy as it states now that some items that would be asked for during the planning calendar process could also be responded to by a report. And I know that occasionally gets done, and that's one of the things that through our agenda setting meeting that we had last week with Jonathan and Jonathan Lowe and our superintendent, Dr. Hargens, was we had a very long list of on-deck issues. Some of those had already been addressed, and that list had not been cleaned up. So we had asked at that time that we get a more leaner, meaner, and outstanding item list, and that's going to be brought forward. And also, that was part of the discussion of why we wanted to do the business planning meeting and piloting that process, and so we can get more into a space of where we can have open discussions regarding these items and start checking them off of the outstanding list.
So,
Jonathan, I think Jonathan wanted to comment.
I'm noticing that on the current discussion agenda planning calendar, we have 2 work sessions scheduled for March 21st. You all just had a conversation about adjusting March meetings so that you would have work sessions during the first meeting of the month and not the second meeting of the month. So maybe that's something to look at adjusting at this point.
Good point. Member Horn, you were going to add?
well, I've got a list of things that, were mentioned in past requests by board members that are not on the on-deck issues. Getting the auditor, the audit risk team formed has been something that it is a serious, it was a serious note on our audit. It's been on there for over a year. So just as the restraint and seclusion, Linda has asked repeatedly for it. So I'm sorry, I do not trust at this point that we will actually get the school by school data. We get no granularity. We want it. I don't trust that it's going to come in a report. So it's never come. It's not come. I have people sending me things to my home, dropping things off, showing me like reports that were supposed to be sent to the board monthly that we've never received. And I'm just at the point where we need to see that data monthly. I don't know. I mean, Linda's asked almost every meeting for the last year for that data. So how are we going to get it? I'm sorry, I just don't trust that we're going to get it in a report. Do you trust that we're going to get it in a report? I mean,
just keep asking.
She's just going to keep asking.
Member Porter.
Is there some way we can table this conversation, because this is a business meeting, these are legitimate concerns, but is this where we should handle these kind of concerns like this, because we're not bringing it to closure? It's typically the planning calendar is discussed when the chair and vice chair work on the agenda. So when reports come, we've heard that, but this is not productive to the work that we must do, and you've already told us that we're having an executive session. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So I think Board Member Horn has made some very good points, but could we move the agenda on based on what you've heard thus far and try to be more maybe one-on-one conversations to bring this to closure? Because we do have other business, and I think that being alert for the rest of the evening, we would like to, I mean, and if everybody else wants to keep talking about this, fine, but I think that you've made legitimate points that need to be addressed. But to keep on over and over, the planning calendar, Angie doesn't do the planning calendar. Jonathan writes the stuff down, it's up there on the thing. Angie posts everything that we write. All of that comes to the chair and the vice chair and the superintendent as part of the agenda planning meeting. So the question about getting reports back, that's another question that can be handled by the chair and Dr. Hawkins.
And what I was trying to address earlier is that the vice chair and I have actually looked at this. We've talked to Jonathan and the superintendent about this to try and call that list a little bit and also get a handle on that to where we start bringing it back and getting
I'm
it
really
on the
appreciative of that, and I really am. I'm concerned about bullying. I know that was mentioned. I'm concerned about Dr. Alsbury's board governance issues, that we really have not revisited that. I'm concerned that we're not focusing enough on student achievement within our board meetings. I would like to see the calendar populated with the strategic priorities that are listed on the on-deck items. I would like to see that we are monitoring the metrics for the strategies and have a timeline. I give kudos to Cordelia and the finance folks. The budget deadlines are on the calendar. And the other directors, if there are things that they need, then we need to have them given to the chair and the vice chair for submission. I know that we have put off the communication Time Warner issue for several meetings with good measure. We needed to, but that's still there. We need a better way to receive community input, and that's been on the agenda item mentioned several times with Dr. Wilner. There's comprehensive sex ed is been referred on this planning calendar to a policy committee, but as a board, we've never discussed whether, we think that would be something we would be wanting in a policy. So this board member is not willing to refer what I believe to be a curriculum decision or a standards issue as articulated very well by our academic, Dr. Herring, why we would be as a board taking on a subject content matter subject. I don't understand why we as a board would be referring that. We had a lot of school updates that we have asked for and not received. The Du Bois School, we are excited about that school and can't wait for an update. Frost and Stewart update was mentioned earlier. The Crosby overcrowding plan, that should be coming in March. ESL Newcomer overcrowding plan has been mentioned by this board. An update on K-8 implementation for Atkinson and Maupin and the status of Maupin. The deeper learning, the new accountability system has been mentioned. The organizational chart review has been mentioned by board members. So there is an update on restorative practices. You know, I could go on. The creation of a finance committee. You know, we need to really develop it because we said we wanted to form a community advisory team. That takes work because we have to draft a scope for that. You know, so we have to figure out what that scope will be before the committee can be formed. Administrator salary, that's the whole compensation. It sounds like we could schedule that. So, I mean, there's so many issues. I just feel like I have to enumerate them because they've just constantly been piling up. But that's what I see. And then that isn't the things that I went through and found that we want to refer to a policy committee. I kind of made a list. I can give that list to the chairs of the, you know, vice chair of the policy committee that I looked and found within that are not the first two. And, you know, that's all I can do is just refer it to the policy committee and they can decide next month whether it shows up on the planning calendar, and then we can have a discussion related to whether we're going to refer things to the policy committee. So I guess my question is, what's the policy about the board referral? How do things get referred to the new policy committee? So that's all I've got.
Currently, we don't have a policy to go to the policy committee because the policy committee is new. So that's policy committee will have to recommend a policy about how things get recommended to the policy committee, I suppose. All right. So is there any other discussion regarding this particular item? All right. So hearing none, would like to see if there's a motion to receive the planning calendar. Is there such a motion? Member Cole, is there a second? Member Duncan, all those in favor? Oh, okay, I thought we had discussion. Okay.
I really feel strongly that I don't think that we should be referring sex ed curriculum decisions to a board policy decision. By law, curriculum is in this SPDM at the school level, or it's a state standard. I don't think that it is wise to be referring this to a board policy for development. You are saying you want the board policy team to develop a policy.
I wasn't saying the board policy team develop a policy regarding that particular item. I was just thinking more of the board policy team could create a mechanism to be able to receive items.
You have on this agenda 2 items that you are referring to the policy committee.
What items am I referring? Oh, okay, I see that here. Okay.
So I guess I will take responsibility for that particular choice. My thought is that there is work to be done based on the conversations that have been had with folks in curriculum for something to be brought forward back to the board. And my thought was that would be the appropriate place to have review with folks from curriculum and instruction so that what gets brought before the board is something that you could look at. The conversation at the moment was, some people are looking for a board policy. There are other people who are suggesting that would be, guidelines that would be aligned with state standards and those kinds of things. So apologies if that's not the direction that the board cares to go in.
I mean, I just think it should, that should be removed from the planning agenda.
The refer to policy committee or the entire item?
I'm talking about the refer to policy committee for the sex ed guidelines.
Okay, so the subject of sex education guidelines should remain just the refer to policy committee part of it? Is that what or the entire thing?
I'm saying that should be removed from this document.
Completely?
It should be completely removed from this document.
All right. Is there any other discussion? Is there anyone who would be opposed to having that item removed? I personally think that having the subject discussed is one thing. I can understand Member Horn's concern about referring that to policy committee, but I still believe that this particular item merits a listing on the planning calendar. Thoughts?
Well, I'm afraid I agree with Steph on this. To me, that the standards are determined by the Kentucky Board of Education, the State Board of Education. And I mean, if this discussion needs to happen about adding comprehensive sex ed to what students, to the curriculum, that needs to happen at the state board level, not a local board level. And to me, that's, again, if they want to go to individual SBDM councils, this is an SBDM council issue. Each school has to make the decision about the curriculum in terms of that, but the standards are set by the state. So I don't feel like it's an area for us to be setting, to be trying to set any kind of standard here.
Member Cole.
I see that as precisely one of the reasons that we need to have it on the planning calendar, so that we can have this discussion about, is it appropriate for us to do, where does the power belong with it? I think, all we have here now is it's on a discussion agenda planning calendar. I don't see the harm in leaving it on there so that we can have a more thorough discussion about whether or not we should discuss it at a future time.
Any further discussion on that? So I actually agree with Member Kolb about this. I think it's something that we should have a discussion about. I don't necessarily want to remove it from the planning calendar in order to not have a discussion about it. Does that make sense? So unless there's a motion, I'm just going to remain.
I make a motion to remove it from this calendar.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Motion made by Member Horn, second by Member Duncan. All those in favor?
We already have a motion on the floor, right? So
that is true.
We're going to vote a motion before we take care of the
That's
motion?
correct. That's correct.
Yep,
That's correct. So is the motion to amend that? That would have to be correct? There would be a motion to amend?
I think technically it would be a motion to amend the motion that's on the floor.
Okay. So the motion to amend the motion that's on the floor would be the motion to remove, again, just so we have this correct, is there a motion to amend to remove this particular item from the current motion that's on the floor?
Yes.
From Member Horn, second.
Yeah.
Member Duncan. So the vote is to amend the motion that's on the floor to remove this particular item. All those in favor? All those opposed? All right, that motion is doesn't carry. All right, so the motion that's on the floor now is there a motion to approve the planning calendar as is? Okay, thank you. So all those in favor of accepting this particular item as is? All those in favor? All those opposed? And motion is 4-3, motion carries. So this item we can have an opportunity to discuss this at a later time, but this motion carries for this particular meeting. Moving on to our next item will be board reports. Are there any board reports? All right, Member Cole.
I would just like to say I attended the Golden Key Awards ceremony last Thursday, February 16th at Durrett Auditorium. The Gold Key Awards are a scholastic art and writing competition that happens nationwide. JCPS students did incredibly well in this and received 93 gold. There were 93 Gold Key winners among JCPS students. And it's a competition that's open to all students in the area, not just public school students. So there were 127 overall. If you haven't had a chance, please go out to KMAC and see the artwork that is on display by our students. It is incredible. It will blow your mind. That display at KMAC only runs through this Sunday. That's the Gold Key winners. The Silver Key and honorable mentions are over at Durrett, or at the building next to it. Thank you, Geens. I'm still getting the terminology straight. But they are there through a week from tonight, 2/28. So, and just quickly, I want to thank the financial sponsors of that. JCPS sponsors it, but the Fund for the Arts, KMAC, Height Art Institute at U of L, Louisville Area Fiber and Textile Artists, and Louisville Visual Art Association. And I just want to say a big thank you to Melissa Gunno, JCPS's K-12 Arts Curriculum Specialist, who works really, really hard on that. And it was a really fantastic event. So thank you to Melissa Gano.
Other board reports? Member Duncan.
Just want to mention we had a tree dedication ceremony in honor of the late Dr. Betsy Pickup at Medora Elementary on Monday, and her family came back in from out of town and received a tree that it was a portrait of a tree, and every student in the school had put a thumbprint on the portrait, and they received a copy of the portrait, and then there's one to hang in the building, and it is a spectrum magnolia tree that was planted out off of the picnic area, actually, and we're just waiting for the beauty of that magnolia tree, because it will remind us of the beauty of the spirit of Betsy.
Board Member Horn.
Ms. Porter and I had the opportunity to meet with the Fund for the Arts, Kristen Boone, to work on the arts plan and talk about our coordination with the Fund for the Arts and all the good that they're doing for arts in our schools. It was exciting and meaningful, and it was great to hear earlier in the program about the Fund for the Arts starting to reach into the early childhood area with the 2 schools that in our Head Start program are now having an arts educator within the program. So I see that as it's just an exciting time, and the plans that the fund has to bring arts out into the community and really get it out into different areas of the county was also very exciting. Also had an opportunity to go to a press conference where GE has funded the position, which we approved today on the consent calendar. It was the position to add the employee. They funded a position, and then we went to Ballard and celebrated that connection with a corporate citizen to try to, have a great pipeline of from the high school and to people who are interested in engineering. Ballard is looking at a career academy for engineering, so it was very exciting to see, and there were students from J-Town and other areas of the county to celebrate that initiative. I'm very, very excited about that initiative and was happy to be able to attend that.
Any further board reports? Member Porter.
Just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about, as we talk about partnerships with JCPS, that we can't do the work by ourselves. Tonight we had an opportunity to hear from the students from Central High School, the Law and Government Magnet. Last Thursday at the Louisville Bar Association, which they referenced, there was a program that they have annually to highlight the students in law and government and the work that they've done. So I would like to publicly thank the Louisville Bar Association, and especially like to thank the University of Louisville Brandeis School of Law, Professor Laura Rothstein, who has been a part of this project forever and ever, and to their dynamic teacher, Joe Gutman at Central High School. Tonight you saw a portion of greatness at the Law and Government Magnet, and I wanted to go through the fact that this is not something that just came to the district. It's been here since 1986. Central Law and Government Magnet came to the Jefferson County Public Schools, and in 1992 the Bar Association started with the Summer Law Intern Program. In 2001, the Central Partnership with the University of Louisville Brandeis School of Law begins, and in 2006 they started with development programs including street law, writing skills, Marsha Brennan civic liberties, and the curriculum involves law students teaching at Central High School. 2011, Central students placed first and second nationally in the Marshall Brennan Moot Court competition. 2015, Central High School Partnership graduates enrolled at the Brandeis School of Law. 2016, Brandeis School of Law and Central High School marked 15th anniversary partnership. And at the program, they had 5 students that were graduates of Central High School. They talked about the impact that being in the program had made on their life, the opportunities. I want to read briefly something from Marcelia Hayes. Because of Mr. Gutman, I had a teacher who cared about everyone in our future. Central helped me grow as a person, The program had such a big impact on us. Brandeis School of Law took an interest in me when I was in high school and followed me every step of the way. They invested in me and believed in me. It feels like home here. I'm saying this because a lot of times we talk about our weaknesses and things that we are not doing well. This is a true program that has been in existence for a long period of time, and it behooves us to say thank you to people because they don't have to. They don't have to embrace our students, and they certainly have for a long period of time. I had the honor to be in the Bingham Fellows class in 2014 with a young man by the name of Demetrius Holloway. Demetrius Holloway started an apprenticeship at Stites and Harbison when he was 16 years old. In 2014, Demetrius Holloway became a partner at Stites and Harbison. I am, in case you can't tell, I am overly proud, and we should all be proud. These are our kids. They're not mine personally. These are our kids. They belong to JCPS. So I wanted to give a shout out to that. Quickly say that I attended the Roosevelt Perry Read-In and had an opportunity on Friday to go to the Shawnee Early Childhood Program where we talked about character to little people and how important it was to build character and to tell the truth and to be nice to each other and to say please and thank you. So that's all I wanted to report. Thank you very much.
Vice Chair Wellner.
I'll keep it short. It's been a really busy couple of weeks, but I'll just highlight a couple of things. So the Cradle to Career Cabinet met for a 5-hour planning retreat on February 14th. And there really is this strong sense of commitment from city leaders and community leaders to work alongside JCPS and build a cross-sector capacity to support our students' success. Related to Cradle to Career Cabinet, there's a project scoping group, a behavioral health project, and we're sort of getting closer to identifying what that project is, and the focus will be on social emotional learning and on proactive approaches, and expect to have more details on that. And then just a lot of Black History Month events, and I'll just mention one of them at the Newburgh Library. There was an African American read-in and had the opportunity to participate in the second annual, and this is a read-in that's all organized by students from a whole bunch of different schools. The youngest student who was one of the organizers was a first grader, and she was magnificent. And it was, the event grew from, I want to say 20, 25 people the first year to 50 to 60 this year, and they're outgrowing the Newburgh Library. So that was a very exciting and inspiring event.
Any further board reports? All right, I have a couple. I just want to, first on a more serious note, express some concerns I have regarding some of the communication that's come to this board regarding the Maupin Elementary School program. I know that there's been a concern expressed about how the Phoenix School Discovery issues were brought to this board, and I know that there was a comment made that we need to learn from mistakes. I just hope that we're not in the process of repeating that same mistake less than a couple weeks later. So I just want to bring that up because I do feel that we need, if we're going to make the commitment to this program, even if the state does come back, like one of our speakers said, I think it behooves us to be able to push back and challenge that. I just don't think that it's been an appropriate or fair amount of time to be able to see something that's we had actually gotten approved as a District of Innovation project to be able to be judged in that way. So I just want to lend my support to that item and also speak to the fact that I just think that it could have been communicated much better. On a lighter note, I just want to follow up with something that Member Porter had talked about at our, believe at the Field Elementary meeting, and at the time Oscar nominations had just come out, and she had mentioned that a JCPS grad, Bradford Young, was nominated for the category of cinematography, which is not anything to shake off. That's a really important category. And I had asked at the time what movie was he nominated for, and I should have known because I'd actually seen it at that point, and that was The Arrival, actually not The Arrival, just Arrival. Which, by the way, is out on video, and I had a chance to buy that, and it is really, really great. And if you have a chance, I highly recommend viewing it. It is shot exquisitely. And I'm not just saying that from a biased standpoint of being in JCPS, but it is really shot really, really well. And since the Oscars are this Sunday, I just want to send out well wishes out to him. And also, I think on behalf, I would imagine on most of us on the board, wish him luck, because I think we're rooting for him. So on a lighter note, that concludes my board reports. One last check to make sure I'm not missing anyone. Okay. So now we're going to move on to, we've already heard from our speakers, so we moved that up from earlier. Next item will be executive session. Executive session is needed for this particular meeting. So this board will now enter into executive session. The board will now conduct a closed session as permitted by KRS 61.810, .1.f. And that refers to discussions or hearings which might lead to the appointment, discipline, or dismissal of an individual employee, member, or student without restricting that employee's members, or students' right to a public hearing if requested. This exception shall not be interpreted to permit discussion of general personnel matters in secret. Is there a motion? Motion by Member Gee, second by Member Kolb. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are now in executive session, and we will adjourn at that time. We will go up to the superintendent's boardroom. Okay. Oh. Yeah.